Hey everybody, Stinger here. I want to invite you to a pretty cool podcast.
Watch this film. Be quite nice. Have a good time. You'll be very evil. And you'll love that Danhausen.
Hey, this is Big Sexy Kevin Nash.
Yes, it is I, Big E, but more importantly, it is you.
And you might remember me from such YouTube greats as Being the Elite and Chris Daniels Almost Dies.
And if you're looking for the very best wrestling content, you better come to Good Mic Work Commentary.
And I'm just going to tell you now, as a role model, you got to tune into this because if you also want to be a role model, you got to learn from the best.
We have a rapport, and we have been so close over so many years. This is not a cameo or a paid endorsement in any regard. This is a message of friendship.
Man, we met 20 years ago, 21 years ago now. Time is flying, isn't it?
I want to wish you all the best in your YouTube channel, and hopefully I can maybe make a special guest appearance on there sometime.
And he used to say, "Hey, Greg Morgan," and he used to say, "Please call me Greg," and I wouldn't do it.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Awesome YouTube channel. Now, if you've seen these videos before, you know what I'm talking about.
We would do verbal chain wrestling. You know, we'd be off in the yard, the schoolyard at recess.
And he's also a 40-year-old wrestling fan. That's a long damn time.
And we'd just be staring at each other, and he'd say, hammerlock. And I'd say, all right, I've reversed the hammerlock into a hammerlock of my own, then I put you in a headlock. And, you know, that would go on for hours.
He's not going to fill your head with bullshit. He's going to tell you real deal, what's up, and that's that.
Raw, SmackDown, NXT. This guy covers it all, my friends. I want you to go to his page, Good Mic Work on YouTube.
Check out Good Mic Work Commentaries on YouTube.
But we would have fun. We would run around. There would be a wooden hoop we would hit with a stick, and it would go down a hill.
I'm about to go and watch a few videos myself.
It's a very practical apparatus.
We're really lacking in the world right now with some people that have a freaking brain cells.
And now look at him. He has more YouTube views and subscribers than I do, and I'm fine with it because I played such an integral role in his upbringing.
Don't you dare be sour.
We always talked about wrestling. He was a big Lou Thez guy, and of course I had an affectation for the Hackenschmidts.
Clap for Good Mic Work Commentaries.
This is RJ City, a wrestling rock on tour.
And feel the
Listen to the podcast. Subscribe.
You are watching Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Good Mic Work Commentaries.
Just want to encourage all you guys to check out Good Mic Work Commentaries.
And if you don't, we're going to have a problem.
Do it!
Do it.
Do it now!
Thanks a lot for the encomium and the nice words about my father's Hall of Fame induction.
Hope our paths cross again sometime down the road. Would love to shake your hand again, and good luck on this podcast.
And you don't just watch it one time. You can rewatch every single one of them.
And now, Good Mic Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
The WWE Draft 2023 is underway and has kicked off as of last night's SmackDown. Welcome, everyone, to your Winged Eagle Podcast for April 29th, 2023. We are here to dissect the beginning of last night's WWE Draft. A lot of baffling, head-scratching decisions. As usual with these WWE drafts, I'm usually pretty pessimistic about these things because they literally don't make any sense. And I was hoping that under the Triple H regime and his first draft being, mostly in charge of WWE creative, that maybe he would fix some of the problems that have been glaring issues in drafts in recent years, especially the last 10, 12 years or so of these drafts. They're completely and totally meaningless. They've never really even meant a lot, even when they had their act together, 2002, 3, 4, and those years. It's still just been really, really pointless. And a lot of times just swapping guys around, and girls too, can be good for a little while. But in terms of it really shaking up the wrestling landscape, it never does anything. And I was hoping that this time around would be a little bit better. But even though there were some moves WWE made last night that I really did like, and they're likely to make a few more on Monday that we like as well, there were a lot of moves that just simply don't make any sense. And we're going to talk about that and some of the issues with the draft and a couple of things that I think WWE desperately needs. And after watching the draft net last night, one of those things I think they need to bring back are the authority figure roles on each show. One of my lights in my overhead light is making a noise. Hopefully that will not bother me too much. But I think authority figures are desperately needed right now on Raw and SmackDown. And when you look at Adam Pearce kind of doing both of these gigs, you know, William Regal is sitting right there. If he didn't have that on-screen no compete, it would be great to, you know, factor him in or to pair him up with Adam Pearce or anybody behind the scenes in WWE, a current agent or producer or somebody there with some knowledge that could fill in and be one of these roles. I think would be a really big help, because otherwise when they say Raw has selected, SmackDown has selected, you know, the people in charge of Raw, who are they talking about? Who are making these decisions? And a lot of last night's draft was just annoying like that, you know? So we're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about what we might see on Monday, and we're going to get into the wrestling news as well. WWE lawsuit. They got hit with a big racial discrimination lawsuit, which we will detail as well. We'll talk about some results this week. I really enjoyed Dynamite on Wednesday. We'll talk about the matches we saw last night on SmackDown as well. And we will talk about a lot of other wrestling news, including Trinity Fatu debuting for Impact, which is really cool. Some talk about where WrestleMania 41 will be located, and also what the main event for WrestleMania 40 might even be Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. We're going to talk about the new World Heavyweight Championship that was unveiled this past Monday night by Triple H on Raw, and who I believe is the perfect guy to win that belt for the first time. I don't think he's the only choice, but I think he's the best choice, and we'll get into that later on. We'll talk a little bit about Joey Janella and Enzo squashing their beef. It was really good to see that. Also, we had a sad death that kind of affects wrestling a little bit in Jerry Springer. We'll talk about him. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit about the results we saw this week. Probably not much in terms of last Monday's Raw, but I do want to touch on Dynamite on Wednesday, because we watched that together, and we did have a debut on that show. Somebody jumping ship from WWE to AEW. And also, we had a lot of news on the Owen tournament, which was interesting, and Double or Nothing, the main event, is starting to take shape now as they are trying to figure out a way to get that four-way match done. So we'll talk a little bit about Dynamite. We'll talk about the draft. We'll talk about some results, news, and it should be just a nice, fun, casual hangout, as always, here on Saturday. Now, tomorrow, I'm going to be back. You guys have me 3 straight days in a row, because we're definitely going to be here Monday night after Raw to talk about night 2 of the WWE Draft. But tomorrow night, we're going to be back for a classic pay-per-view watch-along, Backlash 1999, the very first ever Backlash. I figured on the heels of, or on the doorstep, I should say, of this year's Backlash coming up 1 week from today, next Saturday, we should watch the very first one this coming Sunday. So tomorrow night, 8 p.m., Eastern, 5 Pacific, we will be here on YouTube watching Backlash 1999. The link is already up on the channel, and the link is also in the description below, but I don't have a link up yet for Monday's post-Raw stream, which we will be here to talk about that draft as well. So that's kind of what's on the menu today. No rush for me to get through to this podcast. I don't have to rush off to work or anything, so we can kind of take our time getting into this stuff here. I want to say hi to everybody here in the chat, knock out any super chats that are there. Shout out the Patreon supporters, shout out the channel members, and then we will get rocking and rolling with this WWE draft. In the meantime, you guys can really help me out with a thumbs up. Please smash the like button. Please subscribe if you are not yet already. We are on the road to 40,000, and we should get there pretty soon based on the rate that we are growing right now. So that's all good news. So make sure you tell your friends, share, like, comment, subscribe. And if you want to become a member, you guys can do that too right below. Let me cruise to the chat and say hello to some folks that are here. Let's start with some channel members like Steven Taylor, like Jay Lambo. Zane G is in the house. We got Chaz Medeiros. JJ Leg is here. We have Ian Dunn. We got Tatanani, MH Nova, and Luke McAllister chiming in with a nice super chat early there. Thank you, my friend. Excuse me. What's up, Greg? I envision Cody winning Money in the Bank and announcing he's cashing in on Roman at SummerSlam. As long as he doesn't win the World Heavyweight title and dethrones Roman in the not too distant future, I'm satisfied. Me too. I pretty much am. A lot of people are kind of predicting that Cody Roman SummerSlam rematch. And I'm not against that at all. It's just I have a better, and I wouldn't even say a better idea, just an idea that I would prefer. I'm not saying my idea is better. It's just I would really love for something to happen on that Madison Square Garden SmackDown, which I think is just like the following week after Money in the Bank. I'm going to talk more about this later, but if you did Roman and Cody at SummerSlam, and I've seen that opinion a lot on social media. Oh, it's so obvious what they're going to do. Cody is going to go to win Money in the Bank, challenge Roman at SummerSlam, and he'll win the title there. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I'm sure that will be a great moment. But man, I was at WrestleMania. I was in the crowd. I was there feeling that vibe, the Cody entrance, the whole main event setup. That crowd was primed and ready for Cody. And I know there's more of a story for him to finish, to fall short here and then win later and all of that. It's just, I don't know how Cody's SummerSlam victory could possibly be any bigger or better or more memorable than it would have been at WrestleMania. So, I guess that's not really necessarily a reason not to do it. I'm just thinking that I don't know how the moment can be better. Maybe Detroit can surprise us. I mean, SummerSlam going to Ford Field, big stadium show there. Cody winning, dethroning Roman after all this time, nearly 3 years of him holding the World Heavyweight title. I'm sure fans are going to pop. I'm sure it's going to create a moment, and I'm sure it's going to be great. I just don't know if it would have been greater than it would have been at WrestleMania. But like I said, that's not a reason not to do it. I just think that they had their chance with Cody at a big stadium show. He fell short, so I'd like to think outside the box, and I really like the idea of him winning the title in Madison Square Garden in the same building where that Graham and Dusty match took place, where Dusty fell short. I just think it would be a nice story, but we'll have to see. JJ Leg, thank you very much for that $5 as well. I'm thinking the women's titles, don't even get me started. We have so much to get into. I'm thinking the women's titles get renamed ahead instead of swapped this time around, WWE Women's title and WWE World title. That's what they should do. I tweeted yesterday that these idiots need to remove the TV show names from their titles because there's nothing in the world I hate worse in WWE than a fucking belt exchange. And we saw what happened last time with Becky and Charlotte and that whole nonsense. It's so silly. And like you guys know, I am kind of a stickler for like title histories and lineages. I like it to be consistent and not all jumbled up with a ton of asterisks and, title renames and rebrands and unifications and ununifications and, all that stuff just drives me crazy with championships. And it just makes it even more confusing when you start naming the titles after the shows. Then when you switch talent, they just swap the belts. Could you imagine back in, 2004, Triple H and JBL swapping their titles? Swapping their titles because they got drafted differently? It's ridiculous. At least if you have the WWE title and the World Heavyweight title like the men currently have, and hopefully the women will have in the future when you decide to start trading talent, swapping talent, or moving them around in drafts, you don't have these ridiculous championships named after the show, and it would be much more seamless and easier to transition champions that way. And I'm hoping Triple H has the same thought we do. And I think a good indicator that might actually be the case is him unveiling the World Heavyweight title on Monday, because it would be weird for him to unveil that and then still have a Raw women's and a SmackDown women's and a Raw tag and a SmackDown tag. It feels like the World Heavyweight Championship introduction is step one into getting the rest of these titles renamed and set. And if that's the ultimate goal, and if that's something that we see maybe conclude at Night of Champions with these official belts being presented, the new World Heavyweight Women's title and WWE Women's and tags, same thing. If they do all of that, they're great. Maybe they do it on TV here in the States. We don't know. But whatever they do, they need to clean that shit up. And I'm sure you're going to hear me talk about that a lot as we go through some of these results here. How Wheezy, member for 8 months, my shoot brother. Triple H gave you creative control. What is the first thing you are doing? I am fixing all of the dubbed theme music on Peacock. I'm going through and fixing all of it. I know it has nothing to do with WWE creative on TV, but it pisses me off. I'm doing that first. Then I'm bringing back all the classic championship belts with the black straps, Winged Eagle, IC, tags, the whole shebang. And I'm making it all nostalgic for me. That's what I'm doing, How Wheezy. Tatanani is in the house too. Good to see you. I think I got you already. Isaac, the Juliet is here. Michael Cuomo and Zane G chiming in with $5. WrestleMania 41 in Minneapolis. Your thoughts? Lesnar retirement match possible. Didn't even think about that being in Minnesota. If that's where Lesnar is going to have a retirement match, I think Lesnar could go another 5 years, to be honest, if he wants to continue to show up and make money. If Brock is legitimately done and he's satisfied with the amount of money he's made and he's ready to go back to Canada and hunt deer for the rest of his life, Minneapolis would be a good spot for him to retire and maybe have a final match, putting somebody over at WrestleMania. I'd be into it. In terms of Minneapolis, we will get into that later, Zane, but I know Minneapolis has been in the running for a WrestleMania for quite some time, ever since they built the new stadium for the Vikings to play in, and it's a beautiful facility, and I'm ready for WrestleMania to go to a different city, you know? So hopefully they will get it. I have no issue with Minnesota if they do wind up landing WrestleMania 41. WWE Fan 22, appreciate the 5 from you. I hope they do Cody versus Roman 2 at SummerSlam. I'm going to SummerSlam. Well, it's looking like it's likely. And hey, with the pitch that I'm going to, the idea I'm going to pitch later about Cody winning the title, Cody and Roman could still happen at SummerSlam. It just might be the third match between those two. And we are going to talk about this as well, but there was a rumor, I believe, posted by WrestleVotes about Roman and Cody being on the table for WrestleMania 40 next year in Philly. And of course, that got a lot of people upset. What? You mean to tell me Roman's going to hold the title for another year? I'm like, not necessarily. If Roman and Cody is penciled in for the main event, or they're thinking about that being the main event for WrestleMania 40, that could mean that Cody is defending the title against Roman. It doesn't necessarily automatically mean that Roman is going to hold the title at that time. Cody could beat him at SummerSlam and then defend and drop it back to him at WrestleMania. Could mean anything, but we'll talk about that too. Let me see, round out some more of these shout-outs. Max Pokebrush, Sonic Plays. Good to see you guys and everybody else in the chat that's hanging out. Let me just go over to Patreon and thank our friends over on the Patreon channel. Thank you so much to CTFB throwing rubber chickens in the ring during a Cody match. Thank you. Also, Kenny Ward, Anthony Del Preta, Paul Carpenter, William, Joseph Hudson, Chris Broski, Divine Ricks, Ryan, Nikita Abalakin, Chris Miner, Super Fluffy Toaster, Alan Carter, Brandon Yelverton, Nick Musser, K-Dogs, Kennel, Ryan Y, John Redifer, Claudio Clavedetcher, Daniel Rodriguez, Reese Jones, John Riffle, Michael Cuomo, Naveed, and Blake Moran. Thank you for all the support over on the Patreon page. More content coming to the Patreon page real soon. I am working on so much shit. You wouldn't believe the to-do list I have for this channel right now, but I'm getting stuff done, even if it doesn't look like it right now on the screen. Things are happening behind the scenes. I'm very, very, very busy trying to get content ready, for the channel all summer long. So just stay tuned. We got lots of stuff planned, and I'll be informing you guys on a lot of that real soon. I want to also thank all of our current channel members. You guys are the best. MJ Parker, Ian Dunn, MH Nova, T. Lee Thames, Alex Bryant, Elizabeth J. Lambo, Vash Starwind, James Williams, Sonic Plays 64, Leo Whalen, Super Fluffy Toaster, Chaz Medeiros, Sam Piboon, Chris Ludek, Stephen Taylor, Anthony Matisse, Jennifer, Deshaun Robinson, Motown Slim, Ramon Coffee, Big Mike, ATP, Mike, Ken Webb, Titanium Titan, Casey, Josiah Blevins, Kevin, Ruben Litton, Fox Star Killer, The Juliet, Beatso, Amanda, Alan Carter, Zach Palgett, Dre, Sean, 2018, Jordan Karg, Eli, Financial Truth Academy, Devlin Husband, Michael Tong, Longboard, Jeff McMahon, Mikey Too Cool, Luke McAllister, Tar Brehan, Zelius Ward, William Bo Klavlovic, Al Ramos Pro, Zach H, Chris Miner, Mike Witt, Jimmy Anderson, C-Mac Mab, Joshua Aparicio, How Wheezy, Spaz Phoenix, my boy Ronnie, Nicole Lensing, Marcus the Entertainer, Nikita Abalakin, Divine Ricks, Zane G, Chris Barrera, Michael Kumo, John J.E. Dennett, S. Tatananti, Nick Musser, K-Dogs, Kennel, what's up, Kevin? Max Pokebra, Spectra, Reese Jones, Victor Cologne, Isaac, George Morris, Population 420, and the OG, JJ Legg. Thank you as always, guys. Memberships are currently open. If you would like to join, you can also gift memberships to other channel subscribers if you would like. It's a lot of fun. And again, like I said, with all these updates, channel member updates coming, we have some members-only watch-alongs coming up that I know what we're doing. I just need to find which Sunday we're going to do these on. And one of them, Elizabeth, is going to join me, and we've already picked out the show we're going to do. So that's coming up. If you're a channel member in the month of May, probably going to be coming real soon. So you guys stay tuned for that. Lots of exciting things happening over here on the channel, but you guys are probably tired of hearing about that. We have to talk about wrestling stuff, and there's a lot of it. So I want to get into the WWE Draft, and I think we should probably start with that, although This lawsuit, man. Let's keep the podcast as positive of a start as possible, and not talk about how racist WWE is. But let's talk about the WWE Draft, and then we will circle back and talk about some of the news. How does that sound? Sounds good to me. So the WWE Draft, as we know, 2023 kicked off last night on SmackDown with its first night, and as they have done in recent drafts, they had a couple of draft pools that were going to be eligible for Friday and on Monday. And then today they did kind of like a supplemental draft where they drafted a few more names, including some NXT talent. And we also saw some head scratching NXT talent get drafted last night as well. So last night on SmackDown was really centered around the WWE Draft. There were a few matches on the show, including a very important main event for the tag team titles, which did see Owens and Zayn retain their titles over the Usos. A lot of uncertainty right now in the bloodline, as we'll talk about here in a minute with the draft, but also with Roman not speaking to the Usos. It feels like they are really on the outs, and Solo is just waiting in the wings to murder these two boys, and he probably would have last night had Riddle not gotten involved. So that was our main event. It was really just kind of a one-match show. It was the only match that really mattered last night. We saw Zelina Vega get a quick roll-up win over Sonya Deville, give her a little incentive victory there, a little tune-up victory before she goes into Backlash and gets murdered by Rhea Ripley. Rhea Ripley showed up at the end of this match, by the way, and killed poor Zelina and gave her a little taste of what she's in for at Backlash a little bit early. LA Knight got a win over Butch, who was still Butch as of right now. We saw Riddick Moss, or Madcap Moss, was changed back to Riddick Moss on the website, really hoping that the same will be the case for Butch, as he will return to the Pete Dunne name. Maybe him losing right here and taking a couple of losses is a good way to, kind of bring him back and resurrect Pete Dunne. And last night's matches were kind of an afterthought in terms of what was really important on SmackDown, and that was the draft. So we had 4 rounds on TV. The first round was going to be completely announced by Triple H, and the other 3 rounds, they were bringing out legends. They haven't really done this before, bringing out legends to a podium to read off the names. So that's a little bit better, but it's still not really accomplishing anything, and it still doesn't make any more sense than it did when you were doing the very, very cheap and lazy way of just doing that stupid game show roster shuffle effect on the Tron and then just stopping on a name and saying, that's who's drafted to SmackDown now, basically just showing everybody via their great production wall all of the stupid, pointless, thoughtless decisions that they made that day at lunch and catering. They're just going to use the Titantron to deliver that message to the fans. It was so fucking lazy, and it drove me nuts. So now they're bringing out legends to announce this, but they're not. It's not like the fans need to know this stuff. I mean, who's in charge of Raw and in charge of SmackDown? But back in the day, they were always, letting you know about authority figures and stuff. And then to all of a sudden enter into this era where we don't know who's in charge of it, if anything, is just kind of really weird. And it's even weirder when you have a draft, when you're saying things like Raw selects. Okay, Raw selects, fine. Who is selecting? Who are the humans back there making this decision? And that's why I think an on-air authority role for both shows would be really beneficial to the product right now. I know there have been times throughout the years that authority roles have really overstayed their welcome. They've been way too heelish, or they've just frustrated a lot of fans. And we saw that a lot with Stephanie McMahon and the Authority and Triple H. We don't want to return to that, but I think the way WWE and pro wrestling these days in general is structured on TV every week, and we've talked about the same problem in AEW, is that you do kind of need some sort of a spokesperson to come out and make these decisions. Right now, AEW is kind of just using the headset, as we saw on Dynamite with Tony Khan telling Shivani to deliver a message to the fans. That's kind of how they're doing it. And in WWE, you have Adam Pearce. But if you have 2 brands, how can this guy be the GM of both brands when they're supposed to be separate shows? It just doesn't make any sense. So it would be much easier to grasp for fans if you had somebody coming out and representing Raw and somebody coming out and representing SmackDown. And as I mentioned earlier, it's too bad that William Regal has that on-screen no-compete, because I know when Tony Khan allowed him to leave AEW to go back to WWE, I believe there was a stipulation in there that he had He could work for them, but only as a backstage role, meaning he could not appear on camera until his AEW contract would have been up, which I have no idea when that is, but I don't think it's in 2023. I think whenever that is sometime in 2024, probably early 2024 at best. So unless you want to stall for the next 8 months, you could do that and then bring William Regal in. It's just, I really think the shows need these figures, and I'm not looking to have an over-the-top GM. You know, I really liked what WWE did back in the day with Jack Tunney, because Jack Tunney was an important figure in WWE, but he was only around when big decisions needed to be made or a ruling needed to be made, or you didn't really know what else to do. And those type of rulings that Jack Tunney would make are way more frequent now. You need an on-air authority to do this a lot more often. But I don't want the authority figure to open up the show, have several, 3 or 4 segments on the show. That's a little bit overkill. You just need somebody there who is the mouthpiece of the show and will make decisions when need be. And I'm not looking for Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Undertaker or any of these big over-the-top characters, because I'm looking for stability here. I'm looking for some longevity where you can have people that will probably maintain these roles for as long as WWE wants them to, meaning these should be people who are already working in the company and are backstage every week. I don't want to bring in a legend for this, where you fly. I guess you could, but it's just, I just feel like that could end at any moment, to where Adam Pearce, he has a backstage role in the company. He's there every week. That's why I think William Regal would be a good choice, because he's also there every week working, in a backstage position, and he's somebody that could easily have an on-air role instead. It doesn't have to be a man. I know Molly Holly's back there doing shit, and you've got some other women that I think have been on TV before that are backstage in the company. You can help me out how many are there. But anybody like that, somebody like Gregory Helms, what's his name? Jamie Noble. An agent or producer like that who's been on TV before, can cut up promos, got good speaking skills, fans remember, and you put these two people in charge of the shows. That way, when you have issues during your show or matches need to be made or set up for pay-per-views, it's not just Adam Pearce doing that. And it would come in really handy for this draft if you had somebody there representing each show and announcing the picks that they made. Otherwise, it's really silly when WWE tries to present this thing as legitimate with a little ticker on the screen, letting everybody know who got drafted, when it's executed so lazily and poorly. It's just so weird. WWE needs to make up their mind if they want to make this feel real or not, because right now it's a really stupid combination of both. And the draft is just head scratching. So like I said, Triple H opened up SmackDown last night, and he is going to announce the first 4 picks, 2 from Raw, 2 from SmackDown. And he announces that SmackDown gets the first pick, and right off the bat, they're not making any sense, because I think Triple H originally said that everybody is eligible for the draft, even tag teams. So the way they made this sound is like the brand gets to choose if they want to draft a team or an individual, because we saw several groups and tag teams drafted here. So you just never, right off the bat, you're kind of confused at the rules. So Triple H announces that SmackDown, with their first pick in the 2023 draft, has selected Paul Heyman, Solo Sikoa, and Roman Reigns as a package deal. So 3/5 of the bloodline, no Usos involved here, just these 3. They are drafted together to SmackDown for the number 1 pick. He then transitions to Raw for their number 1 pick, and Raw selects Cody Rhodes. So not too much of a surprise there in the first 2 picks. Roman goes to SmackDown. We kind of had a feeling he was going to stay on SmackDown. There wasn't much of a chance of him going to Raw, but they just, took away the obvious there and put Roman back on SmackDown. Most people figured that's where he would land. Now, Cody going to Raw has gotten a lot of people concerned, because they're like, oh, shit. I mean, I wasn't even watching SmackDown last night. I was at work, but I was reading Twitter, and the minute Cody was drafted, it's just like immediately every tweet, whoop, it's guaranteed Cody's going to win the World Heavyweight title now. And I'm like, why is that guaranteed? Why is everybody so believe that this is what they're going to do? I think, as I'm going to talk about here in a minute, that WWE wants to make sure that that world heavyweight title does not come off as a consolation belt. And right now, that's the phrase that everybody's using. It's a consolation prize. It's a consolation prize. And I really don't see it that way, provided Cody doesn't win it. If Cody wins it, it's going to feel like a consolation prize. And that world heavyweight title is nothing like the belt that his dad wore. Cody already got that opportunity. Remember it All In a few years ago, won the NWA title from Nick Aldis. You know, that's his dad's belt. If there's a world heavyweight title to be had, it's that one, not this new shit that they presented. So I don't believe that Cody being on Raw means that he cannot challenge Roman Reigns at all now, because we still have Money in the Bank coming up, and that is a big deal. So don't think that it's over for Cody. And like I'll talk about later, I don't think that Cody should win that world heavyweight title. Now we're back to SmackDown for their second pick, and SmackDown selects, here we go, Raw Women's Champion Bianca Belair. So we have the SmackDown Women's Champion Rhea Ripley on Raw right now. SmackDown then drafts the Raw Women's Champion. So we find ourselves in this situation again where we have champions on different shows. I think this now solidifies that Ripley and the Judgment Day are probably going to stay on Raw. They weren't in the draft pool for last night, but I'm assuming on Monday they're going to get drafted as a group, because you're not going to bring Rhea over to SmackDown now, right? Even though she appeared on the show last night and attacked Zelina Vega, I have a feeling that Rhea will be drafted to Raw on Monday, and then we have to figure out what to do with these stupid belts. And by the way, for Raw's second pick, they select the man, Becky Lynch. So they didn't pick Rhea Ripley, they picked Becky Lynch. So SmackDown starts off with two champions, Roman Reigns and Bianca Belair, and Raw selects two people who aren't belt holders, which is kind of strange. So now that Bianca is on SmackDown, and if Ripley goes to Raw, I really am going to be annoyed if they just do the belt swap thing. That's just so fucking lazy. And that's why I hope what we talked about earlier ends up happening with Triple H changing the names of these titles to WWE and World. Do that for the women, the men, and the tags. And then when you do that, it doesn't matter if champions swap shows, because all you're doing is swapping the belts, just like back in the old days. And it feels like Triple H unveiling the World Heavyweight Championship and that belt being a Raw belt kind of feels like he might have been trying to recreate how it was when he was World Heavyweight Champion and he was on Raw, trying to create that landscape. So hopefully these belts get renamed, because Raw and SmackDown belts are stupid. And now another thing that sucks about this is, you guys know Greg and his title history and lineage issues and pet peeves that I have. Bianca Belair has been Raw Women's Champion for over a year now. Does that mean that run ends and she's now the SmackDown Women's title? Technically not. It's going to be one uninterrupted run, but it's still going to have that asterisk there that I don't like, that her belt is actually going to change names in the middle of her run, and that's just fucking stupid. So I really hope that this gets worked out before Night of Champions. Otherwise, we have a whole month of having this Raw SmackDown shit, and I hope that Triple H starts to clean this mess up, maybe even as early as this Monday on Raw. But we also have to remember that Raw is to go home to Backlash coming up in Puerto Rico next Saturday. So they've got a lot to do, and I have a feeling that Raw will be just as much of a clusterfuck as SmackDown was last night. So another weird thing that they mentioned too about that World Heavyweight title, we'll stay on the subject of this, is that the announcers last night said that Raw and SmackDown talent are going to be involved in the tournament, with the finals, as we already knew, for the World Heavyweight title to be at Night of Champions. So if Roman got drafted to SmackDown, which by default made the World Heavyweight Championship a Raw championship, why are SmackDown people in this tournament? It's like right before the draft is even over. They're not even halfway through the draft yet, and they're already letting you know that a lot of the shit that they're doing isn't going to mean anything, because Raw and SmackDown guys are both going to be in the tournament for the belt. What if the finals are two SmackDown wrestlers? I mean, they could make it easy here and just say, oh, the winner, if the winner of the tournament is a SmackDown wrestler, then that wrestler will now be on Raw. No big deal, right? But why even have them involved at all, you know? But I guess it's just to keep the tournament brackets and the talent pool as strong as possible for that, to really, solidify that this champion is a big deal. But right off the bat, that whole shit with the World Heavyweight title is a little bit confusing. And we'll circle back to the World Heavyweight title in just a second. Let's continue with the draft. The next round, round 2, the 2 guest presenters are Michael Hayes and RVD, or as I like to call them, Hendricks and Chronic. They're out here to announce the next 4 picks, and it's just such a bizarre choice of legends to bring out, and calling RVD up. Hey, you want to come announce some draft picks? Yeah, man, sure. And you're going to do it with Michael Hayes. Cool. RVD doesn't give a shit. I kind of forgot who announced who here. Oh, I do. I remember. It was RVD did Raw. Michael Hayes did SmackDown. So Hayes announces SmackDown's next pick, which is the Street Profits. I thought for sure when this draft started that it was going to be used to split the Street Profits up. That's not happening now. They're simply just moving over to SmackDown. I still feel like a Montez Ford singles run is in his future this year in 2023. So that can just begin over on SmackDown now without the need to really break these guys up right now. But at some point that has got to happen, you would think. And it's not really that much of a surprising pick either, based on the fact that Bianca Belair was drafted over there. So I think Montez and Bianca, Seth and Becky will remain on the same brands. And with Seth being my pick to win the World Heavyweight title, we're almost guaranteed to see him drafted to Raw on Monday. RVD announces Raw's next pick, and this was a good one. The entire faction of Imperium. So Gunther and his long Intercontinental title reign and his Imperium stablemates will be heading to the Raw brand. That's one of my favorite picks here because that's a really good change of pace for them. Fresh opponents for Walter and a lot of having Gunther and Imperium on Raw to me is way better than having Austin Theory there. So I would expect that Austin Theory and his US title is going to be heading over to SmackDown in the draft on Monday. And then we have Michael Hayes announcing SmackDown's next pick, the rated R superstar, Edge. So I don't think, other than a few appearances, Edge has actually been a SmackDown wrestler since he was in the company all those years ago prior to his retirement. So that's really cool that he's returning to SmackDown, even though he's pretty much part-time. He's probably not going to be there every week or anything, but seeing Edge back on SmackDown is very heartwarming. And then RVD announces Raw's next pick. And of course, he's got to pick Riddle. Very cool that they had RVD be the one to announce Matt Riddle going over, or staying, I should say, on the Raw brand. Round 3 was up next. Another weird, baffling round. Teddy Long and JBL are going to be the ones announcing the picks for these 2 brands. But for some reason, Teddy Long announces the Raw picks. Do they not remember anything in this company? Like, what the fuck? So crazy. So Teddy Long is going to announce Raw, and JBL announces SmackDown. So JBL announces that SmackDown's next pick, it's a good one and not a very surprising one either, Bobby Lashley. So Bobby is going to be heading over to SmackDown. I think much like Gunther and Imperium, this is a good move for him. He's been on Raw for quite a while, ever since those Thunderdome days, and I'm ready for him to have a nice change of pace, and it puts him back on the same brand as Roman. That could be interesting. And Lashley heads over to SmackDown. Raw selects Drew McIntyre. Interesting pick. I like this one too. First of all, Drew follows Gunther over there, which is kind of cool. And it makes Drew a really strong contender to be the first guy to win that World Heavyweight title. And if I can't have Seth, like basically Seth is my first pick. I feel like Seth is the perfect guy. I feel like it should be Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes in the final, and Seth gets his win back and wins the title. But if it's not Seth, I wouldn't mind seeing Drew McIntyre return. He's been off TV for a while. I think he's injured, hasn't been seen since WrestleMania. And he returns to Raw as a killer heel, and he wins the title as a heel. I'd be perfectly fine with that. I like Drew a lot. I'd be cool if they went in that direction. We'll see. SmackDown's next pick by JBL is the OC. So AJ Styles is back. He actually appeared on SmackDown last night with the entire OC. So Gallows and Anderson, so the Good Brothers and Michin are back on TV again, since AJ has now recovered from his ankle injury that I believe he suffered about 4 months ago, and it kept him out of WrestleMania. So AJ being back on the SmackDown brand, I think is really good. We could maybe get another match with him and Roman. This is a good move for the OC, and they got into it with the Viking Raiders and Sarah Logan right last night. Little segment between them. That will probably be our match next week on SmackDown between those, and the OC will win. And then with Raw's next pick, Teddy Long announces that Raw selects The Miz. And that's all I got to say about that. Nothing really to say about The Miz staying on Raw, because that's fine. I don't really care where The Miz lands, but we will continue to see him on Monday nights. Now it is on to round 4. Poor Shawn Michaels. Maybe all those years of being such a dirtbag is coming back to bite him in the ass here, because this poor man seemed legitimately just broken after this, as he has lost some of his NXT students. So Shawn and Road Dogg announced round 4. They come out to the DX music, and SmackDown is being announced by Shawn, and Raw is getting Road Dogg. So Shawn Michaels announces that SmackDown's next pick is Damage Control. So they stay together. They did not break this faction up like we thought they would. Bayley, Dakota Kai, and Io Sky are now on SmackDown. Now remember too, Io Sky has the match against Bianca Belair at Backlash, and this is for the Raw title. So they better figure this shit out and do something a little bit more creative than a goddamn belt swap. So Damage Control is on SmackDown. Road Dogg announces that Raw has selected Shinsuke Nakamura. So this will be cool to see Nakamura on Raw. It feels like I always associate him with SmackDown for some reason. Also, last week on SmackDown, we saw the vignette with Karrion Kross where he has been calling out Nakamura. So that should be your indicator there that on Monday, Karrion Kross will be drafted back to Raw so him and Nakamura can begin their issue, because otherwise, why go through all that stuff? So Kross, because Nakamura got drafted, will definitely be sent to Raw on Monday. SmackDown's next pick broke Shawn Michaels' heart, and he said, "I'm not happy about this one, but SmackDown's next pick is the NXT Women's Tag Team Champions Alba Fire and Isla Dawn." And they had a camera at the PC where they had all of the talent there sitting watching the draft like a college student would before, getting selected in the first pick of the draft, with his family in his living room. It was kind of a setup like that. And they seemed legitimately surprised. So I think they were really just going to surprise the talent, and they really felt like they did not know. Even, Tyler Bate and some of the people that were sitting around them were kind of like, damn, or they were really shocked, and it was legitimate, genuine surprise for most of the talent sitting around these two. So they have drafted the NXT Tag Team Champions, but why? Why are they drafting the NXT Tag Team Champions? Now, right after this, Katana Chance and Caden Carter, or whatever their names are these days, challenged Alba Fire and Isla Dawn to a tag team title match this Tuesday on NXT. So hopefully Alba Fire and Isla Dawn will drop those tag team titles, because we do not need those things on the main roster at all. So get them the fuck out of there. And if you're bringing these ladies to the main roster, fine, debelt them first. But you got to debelt someone else next, because now Road Dogg has to announce Raw's next pick. And he says, Shawn, if you didn't like that last pick, you're really going to hate this one. Raw has selected NXT Women's Champion Indy Hartwell. Now, let me just pause and say, I didn't even know Indy Hartwell was the NXT Women's Champion. Or maybe I knew that and I forgot. I kind of lost track after the Mandy Rose stuff. I know Roxanne Perez, and then Roxanne dropped it to somebody, and then I've kind of just lost track of what the hell's going on over there. But I've always loved Indy Hartwell. Everything I've ever seen from her, I've really enjoyed. So now she's going to be on the Raw brand. That's great. But much like the tag team champions, she really needs to drop this NXT Women's Championship. She's currently injured, I think, too, with some sort of a wrist or arm thing going on. So I don't know how quickly she's going to be able to drop that belt. But as happy as I am for Indy, Shawn didn't look too happy, but he should be happy for her. She's put some time in NXT, and I think it's about time for a call-up for her. It also puts her on Raw with Dexter Lumis, Johnny Gargano, and Candice LeRae, which I believe anyway. She was drafted today. So the entire faction of the Way is currently on Raw, probably just for another day or two until Austin Theory gets sent to SmackDown. But now you've got Indy, NXT Women's Champion, being called up. Why? Why them and not others? And why are you doing this as people are belt holders? Because all it's going to do is telegraph them losing. For a damn fact that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are going to drop those tags on Tuesday. So what do you do with Indy? Is she really going to come to the main roster with the title? We've seen the NXT Championship men's and women's on the shows before, but they really need, for the most part, to be staying where they are. So I feel like Indy needs to finish up business in NXT before she can really get to Raw. So maybe they drafted her, but we really won't see her for a couple of more weeks until she wraps up business in NXT, because I think a lot of NXT talent, JD McDonough is another one, all have matches this week. So they probably are going to have some farewells or wrap up some business in NXT before hitting the road with Raw and SmackDown. But losing the women's champion and the women's tag team champions to the main roster is just bizarre. And I don't know why they do that to Shawn, and Triple H messing with his own buddy, or who's making the decisions. I don't know. Weird ones there. And I just don't know. We saw no Braun Breaker, like if everybody is eligible and there are technically in kayfabe a team of people making these decisions for Raw and SmackDown, how are you picking the women's tag team champions in NXT over Charlotte, over Omos, over so many, or maybe Charlotte's in the other pool, or a lot of other people more capable, bigger stars in the current pool that you could have selected? Why them? I think it's maybe just a way to surprise not only the fans, but maybe surprise the talent, or, for us to say, oh, I didn't see that coming. But you got to think these things through before you call them up. And one of the biggest problems WWE's had ever since NXT started getting good is they call people up with no plan whatsoever at all. So with Vince now being largely gone, or not as influential in creative as he used to be, these were one of the things I was hoping was going to get better. But these feel like quick decisions for some reason, and it just feels like they might not have much plan for them. The only promising possibility here is that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn are the women's tag team champions. If they're going to stay a team, WWE really needs to build their women's tag team title division on the main roster. And we still don't really know the future of those titles, if they're going to stay floating championships or if they're going to be exclusive to one brand. And I feel like they should be floating championships, and you should create actual teams to contend for these things. But we will see. Maybe Alba and Isla coming up is a good way to get that started. We will see. But Alba Fire is, she's a good singles wrestler on her own. She could easily be a contender for the world title at some point. So we will see what these NXT call-ups mean and how many more we might get on Monday Night Raw. We didn't get Braun Breaker here, but we might on Raw. I didn't even catch which pool he was in. And then we did kind of like a supplemental deal today. WWE held extra draft picks on some stupid internet show that I didn't even watch, but I did write down the results of that. And here's what we got. SmackDown selected Hit Row, so all of Hit Row and Lacey Evans. You talk about two draft picks I give less than a rat turd about. It's those two. So Hit Row and Lacey Evans to SmackDown, which is where they've already been. Raw gets a lot of people. I don't know how they decide this. It didn't seem like this was each show selecting. This was SmackDown selecting a couple of picks and then Raw getting a bunch. So Raw gets all of the Maximum Male models. They get Dexter Lumis, Candice LeRae, the Viking Raiders. Okay, so Viking Raiders got drafted to Raw, meaning that little confrontation they had with OC last night, I guess, was pointless, right? Apollo Crews, so after being sent back to NXT, he is now back to the Raw brand. Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville also heading to Raw. Natalya, Zoe Stark, and JD McDonough, all of them going to Raw. So Zoe Stark and JD stand out because I like them both, especially Zoe. And I'm really glad that she got called up. Apollo Crews should have never been sent down. So he's back, rightfully so. Natalya gives a shit. Maximum Male models, they're pretty great on Raw. Good place to keep them. And hopefully Otis will be joining that group and he will not be moved to SmackDown, because that would make me very sad. But that's where some of this talent landed as of today. And then WWE had another baffling announcement. They have some free agents. These wrestlers are going to be allowed, for some reason, to appear on both shows. Mustafa Ali, Dolph Ziggler, and Von Wagner all are currently, as of right now, free agents, meaning they won't be drafted on Raw on Monday. They're already just free agents. How do you get to be a free agent? You get to just decide this? That you can just be on both shows? Like, technically, you're not a free agent. You're still being paid, and you can work both shows. Wouldn't every wrestler want to be that? Wouldn't every wrestler want Well, if I'm going to be paid the same anyway, I might as well be able to work on both shows. That way have more championships to go after. None of this makes sense. And then also they announced that that MVP has negotiated free agency status for Omos. So Omos can appear on both shows. Why? I don't know. Somebody, I think on Twitter, said they want a giant on both shows. Okay, they want a big 7-foot guy they can parade on both shows, fine, but then why do the goddamn draft? Or bring back Commander What's-His-Face and have him out there. Get another giant. I don't understand like why they're so random, these decisions. That's why they're so frustrating, is because they're just so random, pulled directly out of the anuses of these guys. There's let's just do this. Why? Why are they free agents? Maybe it's because they want to wait and see because we see this a lot every year in the draft. Once they make all these decisions and then the dust settles and they see where everybody is, they have a couple of second thoughts. Oh shit, he would have been better over here. She would have been better over here. And they usually clean that up. So maybe this is the same thing. They are not really sure where they should put these guys yet. So they're going to let the draft happen, let everybody get where they're going to be, analyze the two rosters, and then stick these guys where they belong. But they should have already done that. If Triple H announced this draft weeks ago, they should have been working on this thing nonstop, really being able to look at the roster, analyze it, place everybody in the best possible spots, give it some actual real thought. This all still feels extremely Vince-like. It still feels extremely random, totally arbitrary, and no real deep thought goes into any of this shit, and that's what makes me mad. So I still think at the end of the day, this draft has the potential to be better than ones in recent years because of Triple H, but at the end of the day, too, it's still a lot of the same stuff that we've seen from WWE with their inconsistencies and their baffling decision-making and how very little of it makes any sense. You know, in wrestling, you're supposed to suspend your disbelief, but you're not supposed to completely eliminate disbelief. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, goddamn. So that's where we're sitting right now. We'll see on Raw how they finish things up. Like I said, there's a few picks that are kind of obvious in terms of where Seth Rollins is going to go and maybe a couple of others. And we're getting a pretty good idea now of how the rosters are going to look. But Monday should finish solidifying that. So speaking of Monday night, like we said earlier, that is where the World Heavyweight Championship belt is going to be. Now that Roman has officially been drafted to SmackDown, which everybody assumed he would, since they unveiled the belt on Raw, that's probably going to be a Raw belt anyway. Roman's going to stay on SmackDown, which means the World Heavyweight title will be contested, and it will be a Raw champion. I shouldn't say contested on Raw because it's not going to be, but it's going to be a world champion exclusive to the Raw brand. We talked about this a lot on Monday last week when Triple H unveiled the belt and what this could mean for the future of the World Heavyweight titles. And I think one of the big problems that they have right now with this championship situation is that Roman Reigns is still holding on to two belts. And I think that's what's making fans consider this belt a consolation belt or it's a third world title when, you know, in my mind, it's really not. I kind of understand what WWE is trying to do. And like I said earlier, they really need to do this with all the championships too. Do the same thing with the women, do the same thing with the tags. And then this will be a lot easier to figure out. But a year ago at WrestleMania 38, when Roman Reigns beat Brock Lesnar and unified the two world titles, they were unified. And I think the lineages are still kind of separate. Roman is still recognized as the WWE and the Universal Champion, and he's carrying around both belts. But really, I feel like those two belts are one belt now, like they've been unified. So if they've been unified and the Universal title has essentially been swallowed up into the WWE title, which is the way I look at this whole situation, then you do need to create another championship. Because you used to have two titles, you unified them, and now unless you ununify them, and you just do a promo where you tell Roman, I'm taking this belt away from you, you're just going to be the champion of this show now, you know, that would be just as weird in my opinion. So this way isn't that odd to me, provided one thing happens. Roman Reigns is just 30 days away, I think less than 30 days, from accomplishing the 1,000-day run and the 1,000-day milestone. I think when that happens, the next TV or the TV before it, or maybe even at Night of Champions itself, if Roman is going to be there defending the title. Something tells me he might not be, but that's a Saudi Arabia payday, so he probably is going to be there. Maybe that would be a good time to present him with his new World Heavyweight Championship, WWE Undisputed Universal World Heavy, whatever the fuck they're calling it. Roman's belts, the two belts that Roman has, combine them into one and call it one champion. That's the Undisputed WWE Champion or the WWE Universal Champion. I would just like it to be the WWE Champion. I hate the name Universal. I want it out of there. I want it gone. But the Universal title is the one that Roman won 3 years ago. So I think they kind of want to keep that name intact, maybe until he hits the 1,000 days, and then rebrand the title and give him something new. Maybe that's what they're trying to do, but there's no way that Roman Reigns can walk around with these two big W belts without the World Heavyweight title looking like a consolation belt. So I disagree with everybody who says that's a consolation belt on one condition. Roman gets his own belt. If Roman continues to walk around with those two, then I completely agree. The World Heavyweight Championship is a consolation belt. But if they just keep these two titles that Roman has permanently unified, present him with one championship that represents both, rename it if you have to. I'd rather not fuck with the WWE title lineage. That's the title, the black one that Roman is holding. That's the one that goes all the way back to Buddy Rogers and Bruno and all of that. I don't want to see that messed with. But, if it just absorbs the Universal title, then Roman Reigns will be the WWE champion, and we have the World Heavyweight champion on Raw, just like the old days. That's what I'm hoping they do, because otherwise this whole situation is really goofy and really baffling. So let's hope that Triple H understands this shit the same way we do, and he knows that you can't have Roman with those two titles. That needs to be rectified. We have heard a lot of rumors over the past couple of months about new championship belt designs being made. They just revealed one on Monday. Maybe they're doing an entire championship revamp right now. We're in the middle of it. They're just spreading it out, doing one championship at a time. So if that's what they're doing, I can be patient. I've got all the patience in the world. I don't need this shit to happen tomorrow. But they need to figure out and clean this up so it just doesn't look so confusing and it doesn't give fans the impression that you're creating consolation belts. So I think in order for the World Heavyweight title to not be considered, or for me to not consider it a consolation belt, maybe other fans still will, but for me to not consider it a consolation belt, number one, Roman needs one belt to represent the two that he has. And number two, Cody does not need to win that belt, the World Heavyweight title. I think that needs to be going to somebody else. So who should win the first World Heavyweight Championship? Who should be the first guy to hold that title in WWE? Who's the name that you want on the top of your WWE World Heavyweight Championship lineage, a belt that we're going to assume is going to remain in the company for many years to come? Hopefully this is the permanent solution to all of the crazy WWE Universal title shit that they've screwed up over the past couple of years. Hopefully Roman getting a new belt, the World Heavyweight title now being a Raw belt in the future. These champions could swap brands and all of that. It's going to be no problem now. And if that belt is going to be a part of WWE for the rest of their history, who is the name you would want on top of that? And when you think of WWE's modern crop of talent, there's one guy, other than Roman, that, that really kind of stands out in terms of his accomplishments, and that's Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins was the first guy to hold the NXT championship. I think it would be really cool if he was the first guy to also hold the World Heavyweight Championship. His name would look good atop both of those histories. And when you think about Rollins and how over he is right now and the work that he's done, I've been more interested in Rollins and his character over the last year or so than I have in his entire career, even when he was beating Brock at multiple pay-per-views in a row completely clean, So Seth, I think, is probably has the most value in his name to be the first guy to hold that. Plus, you have to remember he put over Cody last year, like 3 times, including that gnarly Hell in the Cell match where Cody wrestled and beat Seth with half of his body torn off. Cody owes Seth one. So what I would do is I would have, and you got to have SmackDown and Raw people in this tournament. Fine. Sounds like that's what they're going to do. But my tournament final at Night of Champions would be Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes. And you can book this match however you want. Cody's got a big match with Brock Lesnar at Backlash. I think he's going to beat Brock at Backlash. on Saturday, or I'm sorry, yeah, next Saturday, 1 week from today. I think he's going to beat Brock. Maybe he sells the injuries going into Night of Champions, or maybe he has to really fight from underneath to make it to the finals of that tournament, and he's in there against Seth Rollins again, injured again, only this time it's a kayfabe injury, and Seth just gets the better of him and beats Cody for the title. And Seth Rollins now gets that victory back from all the jobs he did for Cody the previous year, getting him over, getting him on the map, getting him started, repaying that favor. It doesn't really damage Cody at all. There's no shame in losing to a star the level of Seth Rollins, a star that you beat 3 times the previous year, mind you. Was it 2 or 3? I forgot how many times they wrestled. So he beat him a bunch of times the previous year. Now to lose to him here isn't going to do anything to damage Cody at this point. He's already taken his loss at WrestleMania to Roman Reigns, and it would open up the door for Cody to then go into Money in the Bank and win Money in the Bank, and then go on to challenge Roman Reigns for the title at SummerSlam, like a lot of fans are pointing out. Now, that does seem like one excellent way to do it. I'm sure people are going to have lots of other suggestions for who could or should win the World Heavyweight title. Some people think Drew, some people think Cody, but I don't think it should be Cody. That belt that Triple H unveiled on Raw is not the WCW Big Gold belt. It looks a little bit like it. I'm sure it was influenced by that title because Triple H, is a big fan of that belt. And I think as fans, if we ever wanted to get something like the Big Gold belt back on TV ever again, like we've all been clamoring for, this is about as close as we can get. So even though fans don't love it, it looks a little bit like the Intercontinental title, and it's got that stupid WWE fucking logo in the middle, but that is just the way it is. It sucks that branding is that important, but you have to understand why they do it. These are belts that Super Bowl champions are going to hold in front of, hundreds of millions of people on TV every year. Of course, you're going to want your logo there for branding. And I think that what we saw with that World Heavyweight title, the logo in the middle, that's the least obnoxious WWE's willing to be. So in my mind, I'm just taking what I can get. It's not the Big Gold, but it's not as ugly as the other belt either. And I think with a lot of belts, with me anyway, a lot of times I don't like them at first, but they grow on me. I think you guys can probably agree with that too. So once that belt starts creating a history, starts getting on Raw, starts getting around the waists of champions, I think it can look pretty good on the right wrestler, and we will probably warm up to the World Heavyweight Championship in time. But right now, I think a lot of fans are just a little bit iffy about the whole thing because there's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding it. So I think it's best for the World Heavyweight title and its future if Seth Rollins is the first guy to hold it, because if it's Cody, it's going to feel like a consolation. It's going to feel like we didn't trust you. We don't have the faith in you to beat Roman and be the face of the company. So you're going to be, the consolation, next best thing type of shit. And I just don't think that would do Cody or the World Heavyweight Championship any favors. Where on the other side of that coin, if Seth were to be the first guy to win the World Heavyweight Championship, I think that would do wonders for not only the championship, but for Rollins, because that's going to be the second championship belt that he's been the first holder of. And I think that would be really great for him and his career legacy. And he's going to have an accolade that not many wrestlers have. He's going to have one of those, I beat Austin and Rock in the same night types of shit. I am the one in 21-1. There's not many people that have something about them that nobody else has been able to do. And I think Seth Rollins, being that he's been a company guy, he's been there now for 13 plus years. And we've all been calling for him to be world champion again. He deserves it. He's really the only guy right now that Roman hasn't been able to beat. Seth has a couple of victories over Roman, including a clean one a few years back when he beat him for the title. So I think that Seth is just the guy. I don't like to die on hills. If you have another idea, fine. I'm not saying your idea is wrong. And I'm not saying Seth is the only guy that should win it. I'm just saying in my head, I can't think of anybody better. I can think of other people that sure could deserve it. Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Drew McIntyre, even Cody. Lots of other guys sure would be great World Heavyweight champions, but I'm talking about the first guy to hold it. In terms of the first guy, it's got to be Rollins. Then after that, everybody can hold the fucking thing. I don't care, but I'm looking for the first guy to hold it. Finn Balor might be fun as well, since he was technically the first one to hold the Universal Championship, and Kevin Owens would be fun, given how he won the Universal title largely in part to Balor's injury and then had to cough it up to Goldberg and hasn't been anywhere near the damn title ever since. Well, I guess that's not true. He's had shots, but he hasn't won the championship yet. So Owens, Zayn, there's so many worthy. Gunther could go into this tournament, win the damn thing, and at Night of Champions, he's holding up 2 belts. So there's plenty of guys that could easily be the first world heavyweight champion. What I'm interested in is the best guy. And I think that best guy is Seth Rollins. So on the other side of that coin, you look at the WWE title, like I said, if it turns out to be Rollins and Cody in the finals, Rollins beats Cody, doesn't even have to be clean, could have all sorts of shenanigans surrounding it if you choose to do that. But Rollins beating Cody would kind of finish their story for right now, and it gives Rollins a victory back, because one thing I will say about Rollins is if he is going to win the World Heavyweight title, I feel like he has to beat Cody in the tournament. You know, to not beat Cody after Cody really had his number last year, you know, he really is owed one by Cody Rhodes, and Cody needs to put this guy over at some point. So that then brings us to Cody and what his future is. And a lot of people have got him pegged to win the WWE title this year at SummerSlam after winning the Money in the Bank, because now that Cody and Roman are on separate brands, how is Cody going to get a title shot against Roman Reigns? It feels like the only way to do it is to win the Money in the Bank. And I'd be fine with that. I think Cody would get a great ovation in London. I don't want the Money in the Bank winner to be that obvious, but you know, Cody winning would be great, because what's different about Cody is that he is a babyface, you know, and I think he really is the guy that WWE might use as their next John Cena. It's really hard to fill those Reebok pumps, but if anybody can do it, it's Cody, because he really does enjoy representing the company and going out and speaking. Always looks great, conducts himself well, you know, always dressed up and just does what he's supposed to do, fills that role well, and I think he enjoys it. I really do. So Cody winning the title as a babyface, I think the fans are still into it. It's just a matter of like how he does it. And Cody is such a babyface. He's not the type of wrestler in kayfabe that would take advantage of a situation like attack Roman after a brutal match, or maybe even at Money in the Bank if Roman defends the title that night against somebody, maybe Jey Uso, maybe Sami Zayn, he defends the title again, escapes by the skin of his dick, and then Cody comes out and takes advantage and cashes in. Hey, I tried to fight you fair and square and you screwed me, so I just took the title, you know, I took this opportunity. That would be great and everything. It would create a hell of a moment, but I don't think that's really how Cody does things, and I don't know if it's how WWE would want their new poster boy, babyface poster boy, John Cena type of guy to win a championship. Cody is much more his style to win the Money in the Bank, come out on TV and cut a promo with the crowd and say, you know, I've really not been big on, you know, stealing championships. I want to earn it. That's what my dad taught me. So I'm choosing to call my shot. And then he can either call a shot at SummerSlam, or I don't know why I'm harping on this, because the more I talk about it, the more it seems like it's not going to happen, because nobody else is talking about this. There is a fucking SmackDown the week after Money in the Bank in Madison Square Garden. That's where you do it. I would actually prefer, as a fan, to see that happen in Madison Square Garden than at SummerSlam. And maybe I'm in the minority there. Maybe it's because of the history of MSG, or maybe it's because the first ever memory I ever had of wrestling in my life was a photo of Dusty Rhodes in Madison Square Garden. So I think that Cody winning the belt that his dad couldn't in Madison Square Garden after winning Money in the Bank, calling a shot, because I mean, Money in the Bank will be what, on a Saturday? Then he'll have to do that show on Friday, you know, and then so Money in the Bank will be Saturday. He'll go to Raw. They'll come home, right? Well, maybe are they going to stay over there for Raw? I don't even know what the fucking schedule is for that. But if Cody wins Money in the Bank, then on Raw, he can come out and say, I'm challenging Roman Reigns this Friday, because I believe it's the following Friday, if I looked at the calendar correctly. I challenge Roman this Friday on SmackDown in Madison Square Garden on national fucking TV, on Fox, where more eyeballs watch WWE than any other wrestling promotion and TV show in the world. More eyeballs are on Fox than anything else. And you do that there. You play into the history. You play into the building. You play into Dusty Rhodes. And, you know, at least the one match that he had there, I don't think every match with Graham took place in the Garden, but a couple of them did. And really, really touch on that history. and the history just in general of the Garden. I mean, when is the next time we're going to get a WWE title change in the Garden? When is the last time we had a WWE title change in Madison Square Garden? I don't even know. You guys do. Help me out in the chat there. So to me as a fan, that would be way more special than just recreating the big stadium show match between Roman and Cody. Yes, it'll be good, because the match at WrestleMania between Cody and Roman was really good. It was just that finish that sucked. So Cody and Roman can tear it down again at SummerSlam, no problem. And maybe this time you tie in some Usos or whatever, and finally Roman Reigns' empire crumbling around him, and Cody gets the win. I'm sure that will be a very, very nice moment. But I was at WrestleMania. I was in that crowd. I'm telling you, had Cody hit those 3 crossroads, had Solo not jumped up in the apron and hit him with a Samoan spike, and Cody was able to get those crossroads in and pin Roman Reigns, I don't think we would have seen an ovation or a response, crowd response like that strong since Bryan winning the titles at WrestleMania 30. It was just, we were salivating for it. So I don't know if the SummerSlam match would necessarily be any better, but hey, Detroit's my hometown. They deserve to see a title change too. I suppose at the end of the day, either way is fine with me. You know, I'm not saying, oh, the Madison Square Garden idea is way better. Not necessarily. Maybe maybe once we see it all play out, SummerSlam was the way to go. It's just, I would love for them just to do something fun. WWE title change, Roman's long run ending on national TV instead of pay-per-view. I don't know. Part of me thinks that would be better. It just thinks it would be better. I mean, yeah, it would be a match filled with commercial breaks or something. Maybe they can work something out and go commercial free for the final half hour and give us a good 30-minute dramatic match between Roman and Cody. I'd be all in on that. No pun intended. So we will see what the future is with both championship belts. But the way I look at it, Rollins should be the first person to win the World Heavyweight title, and Cody should beat Roman somehow this summer, likely with help from the Money in the Bank. But anything other than that is going to be head-scratching. If Cody is to win the World Heavyweight title, I'm not going to like that. I mean, it's going to be hard to complain about Cody winning a championship, but it's just going to be like, why did they do it this way? You know, it's like they're purposely not only fucking with him, but fucking with the fans too. And I just don't want to see any of that. So those are my thoughts on the World Heavyweight title, who should win it, and the future of Roman Reigns' Universal and WWE title. Once he hits that 1,000-day bullshit, combine those two, present him with a new title. Something that resembles the old Winged Eagle would be really nice, but I think we all know whatever they give him is going to have a big fat fucking W in the middle, and it might just be the current belt that he has. They might just do away with the blue one altogether, and Roman just keeps the WWE. It might just be that, but I think we need to see that with him, and we need to see something figured out with the tag team titles as well, and with the women's championships. Hopefully that's in the works, because if we're doing belt swap shit, Greg's going to lose his mind. So we'll see. Let me know what you guys think about that whole situation. Championship belt, draft, World Heavyweight title, Cody, Roman, all that nonsense. We have lots more to get into, but before we do that, let me cruise to the chat, see what you guys are saying. I could really use some help on these likes. Holy moly, they are low. Please, guys, help me out with the likes. I would appreciate it. And get them suckers up there for me. Thank you. Let's see where I left off with supers and all of that good stuff. And what else you guys are saying. Pardon me while I scroll through here, because I really don't want to meet anybody or miss anybody. All right, I think I'm back. Caught up. Anybody else that's saying hello to me in the chat, nice to see you. Thank you so much for being here. Stone Cold 10X, welcome to the family now. You might have been in and out, but welcome back. If you are back, Jet the Hawk is here. Good to see you guys. Blair Hathaway in the house. Stone Cold Foley, Jim Duggan. Are these ideas for GMs? What I was saying earlier about the GMs is that I'm not into some big star. I know that might be fun for a lot of fans, but what that tells me is it's not going to be long-term, and it could easily be undone, and it's just inconsistent, and it's kind of like just a temporary decision. I would feel much better if Adam Pearce had somebody join him to take control of the other show, and whoever it was that joined Adam Pearce is somebody who already has a job like Adam Pearce, somebody who works in the company and is at TV every day. It'd be much better than flying in a legend or something like that. I personally think, because if you do that, like if you make Stone Cold the GM of Raw or something. Like, how long could that realistically last? Austin's got a busy life. He's got shit to do. He's not going to be able to be there every Monday. You need somebody there. That's why I think William Regal would be a perfect person for this, but unfortunately, he's got that on-screen no-compete that I believe runs through the duration of what his AEW contract would have run, and that is probably not going to end this year. So WWE could do Gregory Helms or a Molly Holly or a Jamie Noble or anybody else, who's been on TV before cutting promos backstage working in WWE right now. Maybe they can step in and be an authority role with Adam Pearce, but they do need it, and they need it bad, real bad. All right, who'd I leave off in the chat? WWE Fan 22, appreciate 5 more from you. Personally, I wish WWE would stop doing the brand split if they aren't going to be consistent with the brands being split. I think that's probably a point I've hammered home 1,000 times on this podcast. I feel the same way. If you're going to do it, do it. Anything worth doing is worth doing right, and they just don't do anything right. They do it half-ass, and they do it lazy all the time. Mike Okumo, appreciate 5 from you. Should we give Jerry Springer partly give credit to Jerry Springer, partly for the Attitude Era, even if it unintentionally influenced it? Maybe, because, in that very first promo that Vince McMahon, I wouldn't even say promo, that first, I guess it was a promo, that segment he did on Raw in late 97, where the era of the superhero is passe and we're going to be going in this new direction and all that shit. He talked about borrowing storyline ideas from South Park and Seinfeld, and I think he mentioned Jerry Springer in that, and Jerry Springer was pretty wild. I was not a fan of Jerry Springer that much. I wasn't a fan of any of those type of talk shows, and you guys have heard me talk about that before. I've never really been into any sort of reality train wreck type of show. Years later, when reality shows became a big deal, I never watched any of them. I don't like to watch that shit. And back in the day when I was a kid, it was, this is not Montel Jordan. What's the bald-headed guy's name? Montel, Donahue, and Ricky Lake, and all this shit. And it was just this parade of just crazy people, and it got a lot of ratings. People like to watch train wrecks. I don't. I always found it gross and stupid. Ironically, I briefly got into Jerry Springer with some work friends, my first ever job, like 1998. Once, I think by then the cat was out of the bag that Springer was staged, because it was so over the top and so ridiculous that you knew these people were paid and were just acting and all of that. So once that became known, we got in this little habit of having these late night Springer parties after work. After we got done with our shift, we'd go to my house, we'd go to one of our houses and pick up some booze and watch Jerry Springer and just mess around and laugh at the show or whatever. And I did that for a couple of months, but overall, I've always despised talk shows. Jerry Springer, especially because he was so exploitive to, I think, people who dealt with difficult problems or teen pregnancies or homelessness or anything like that. And then he would close the show by saying, be kind to each other, when, he's having N-words being thrown around left and right on a show, full on brawls, chairs being thrown. It's not for me. It never was for me. But I think Springer did have a little bit of influence to the Attitude Era, maybe even ECW, and a lot of things that were happening in the wrestling landscape at that time. And even before Springer got nuts, there's that famous episode where Razor Ramon appeared on the show. Back then they had little kids and shit on the show, and Razor gave him his Intercontinental Championship belt, gave it to him. You can have this. And then famously called up Vince after and be like, hey, can you send another IC title to TV because I gave it to a kid? And Vince was like, did you lose it? And he goes, no, I just gave it to a kid. And he's like, did I not do the right thing? And Vince was like, no, you did the right thing, of course. So that real Intercontinental Championship exists somewhere in the world. I don't know who that kid was that got it, but that was a pretty famous episode. Overall, though, sad to hear of Jerry Springer's passing, obviously. I do remember seeing the movie once, because I just remember that Jamie Presley was in it. She used to live in the same town as me in North Carolina back in the day. And so I think I watched it for her. But I don't know. It was just Springer was not for me. But he passed away, and he was a pretty big, recognizable name in pop culture, especially during that time, because I remember him, and I remember him well. Just never really was a fan of the entire talk show format or setup. Never liked it. When I was in school, I remember my junior year in high school, near the end of the summer or near the end of the year, things start breaking down. You guys remember high school, especially if you're an upperclassman. When you get the last couple weeks of school, teachers start not giving a shit what you're doing. So we would start turning on the TV. In a lot of our classes, I remember this one class, our teacher did not, it was Spanish, I believe. He did not give a shit what we did. And he's like, turn on the TV, do whatever. I'll just be over here messing around. And watching everybody like argue what should be turned on the TV and having so many kids screaming for Ricky Lake. Ricky Lake was all the rage or something. And I'm like, who the fuck is Ricky Lake? And I don't know what it was about her, but everybody was all about, especially the black students in school. They loved Ricky Lake. And once they turned that on, everybody was just glued to it, watching this train wreck. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go out here and have a Coke and a smile and just get away from all this. But I remember the kids that I went to school with really loving Springer and Ricky Lake for some reason. I don't know what's in our brains that makes us attracted to that type of stuff, but it was never for me ever. Always hated talk shows. But I do remember Springer and Ricky Lake, specifically Ricky Lake from high school, because everybody was nuts about her. I don't know why. Growing up in the South, man, it's a weird place being in the Southeast. But anyway, rest in peace to the Springer man. Let's see who else I got. Max Pokey, bro, appreciate $5 from you. I wish Seth won at SummerSlam 2016. That way he could have been the first NXT Universal and World Heavyweight Champion. Didn't even think about that. He was in that match with Finn Balor. He injured the Demon in that. And that would have been interesting if he was the first Universal Champion. So he's a guy that's going to have won two out of 3 championships for the first time, being involved in 3 finals, coming up on the winning end in 2 of them. That would be a pretty cool stat. And imagine if he did beat Finn Balor that night. But I think WWE was trying to create new champions, new stars, and we were all happy to see Balor win. But of course, he had to cough that thing up the next night. And now in hindsight, it looks like Seth would have been the better option there to win. WWE fan, two more bucks from you. The MSG idea is a great idea. Of course it is. It's a fucking awesome idea, but nobody wants to see it. Nobody. Michael Kumo, Sid beat Shawn in 96 for the title. Yeah, but was that the last time? Was that the last time the WWE title changed hands in Madison? It can't be. No. Benoit won it in WrestleMania 20. There's been, other than Benoit, though, now that I think about it, who else has actually dropped the championship, the world championship, in Madison Square Garden? Triple H to Benoit is the last one I can think of offhand. There's got to be some other ones, right? There's got to be. You guys will help me. JW, appreciate the $5. I think people need to stop comparing others to John Cena. John Cena was one-man army. Roman is a coward, and Cody ain't as strong as Cena and is dumb. Well, you obviously are all up the ass of John Cena. Here, Jay, we just, try to just speak openly and honestly. We're not tribal. I'm not dying on any Cena hills. If you're a big, giant John Cena fan, you should like me, because I've spent over a fucking decade defending this man to all the crazy assholes. So if you don't like the fact that I mentioned Cody and Cena in the same breath, that's your problem. Cena is gone. He gone. He's making movies now. Him and his bald spot probably aren't going to be back in WWE winning 2 more championships, which means you need somebody to fill the void that he left, which is what I believe Cody is doing. It's not a comparison. Cody is filling a spot that has been left open by John Cena. See how it works? It's not hard to figure out. Stop being a fangirl. You sound like me if somebody compared Cody to Bret Hart. What? Just relax. Relax, Greg. Relax. Just chill out. I like John Cena, Jay. If you're upset about anything that is said on this channel about John Cena, you're really going to hate what else is out there, because I have Cena's back. Happy 90th birthday to Willie Nelson. Holy shit. 90. Did you see all those dumb Republicans trying to argue against Minnesota, trying to argue against legal cannabis? And one guy's up there going, 2 ounces of weed can be as many as 3 joints. What size joints are you rolling, dude? This fucking big? Just watching how stupidly uneducated they are about this stuff. And Willie Nelson has been smoking weed since he was a fetus. And now he's 90. You never know. Montel Williams. I think I said Montel Jordan. Thank you. I liked him because Montel seemed like more of a down-to-earth guy. Like I'm sure all of his topics were still insanely crazy, but he had this like this demeanor, this attitude of like truly wanting to help people from what I remember. Like I said, I didn't watch Montel very much. I didn't watch any of them, but I knew of all of them. I knew Sally Jesse, Ricky Lake, Montel, Springer, and of all of these fucking crazy people, Montel was the one that I felt like had the best heart inside of him. But I could be way wrong on that. Maybe Montel was an asshole. Just from what I remember of Montel, I liked him. I liked him a lot. I thought he'd make a good politician, to be honest. He was just oh, JW's more. I'm sorry. We rewatched John Cena's matches and he's not as bad as Cody. Does this ever get old, Jay? Running around defending somebody that will never know you exist? Chill out, dude. Good to see Big J, Stone Cold. I mean, who else do I have? WWE fan. 2 more. Greg, you weren't a Real World fan. Not really. I was only a Real World fan for maybe the first couple of seasons, and not even a fan. I just watched it because back in those days, you didn't have everything we have now in terms of internet. You just kind of had to watch what was on TV. So I watched the first couple of seasons of The Real World, and I know season 2 has got that cowboy guy, John. He follows me on Twitter. We talk a little bit sometimes, so it's kind of being cool being followed by him. And I remember that season where Pedro passed away being really sad. But after that, I never watched whatever season that asshole, that bike rider guy, Puck, he sucked. Puck sucks. That one is like the last one I remember. But no, other than that, not a Real World fan and never watched another Real World again after, I would say, probably 1993 or something, because I know I was still in high school. After that, completely lost track of whatever was going on with the Real World. Jay's back. 5 more bucks from Jay. Jay, thank you very much for paying me to yell at me. John Cena will become a 17-time world champion. I hope he does. Greg, you wrong, and that's a lie. You never defended Cena. You always hated him for winning back then. Bullshit, boy. Will somebody wise up, Jay? Like, how stupid can you be? To pay me $5 to tell me that 1.2 thousand videos on my channel are all bashing Cena? Are you kidding me? My God, the energy I expelled and wasted defending that guy. I'm one of the biggest John Cena fans, and I have more respect for him than most modern fans do. So you are coming at the wrong man. And I hope he does win the 17th championship. I kind of feel like he will come back like The Rock did for a little bit of a run whenever he can clear his schedule and, get some of that salt and pepper sprinkle on hair. Maybe use that shit that Savage used, and he can come back and win. I want him to. I like John Cena. Jay, you're talking to a John Cena fan. You're talking to a John Cena fan. I don't know. I couldn't imagine going over to yelling at Bret Hart's wife for not loving him enough. Like, what the fuck? So we all love John Cena on this channel, JW. So just keep your panties on, please, whatever you do. All right. So I have talked to the chat a little bit. We still have lots to talk about. We just dissected the draft and what I believe WWE should be doing with their World Heavyweight Championship, their Roman's WWE and Universal Championship, the tags, and the women's championships. We've talked a lot about that. We need to talk about some wrestling news. And then I want to maybe finish up with a little bit of AEW stuff and talk about the latest with CM Punk and everything going on there. But let's talk about more good news in WWE. They have been blasted with yet another lawsuit, and this one's nice. Isn't it always nice to hear about racial discrimination and offensive material? Of course it is. Well, that's what this lawsuit is detailing. The latest one against WWE is filed by former writer Brittany Abrahams. She is suing WWE for discriminatory treatment. That's a hard word to say. Discriminatory treatment, harassment, hostile work environment, wrongful termination, and unlawful retaliation due to race, color, and gender. So this is Brittany Abrahams. She worked in the company as a writer for, I think, 2 years. Now, the first thing I thought of when I saw this story is I was wondering if it was the same writer that we heard about a couple of years ago that did an interview and said that she didn't know who the WWE champion was. She didn't know his name. And I remember a lot of people were like, what the fuck? Who are you hiring here? Like, what the hell? But this was not her, apparently. This was somebody else. She alleges, now there's a big law. You can read this whole thing. I kind of just wrote down some tidbits and what's being alleged in this lawsuit. And It was discriminatory treatment, harassment, a hostile work environment, and a wrongful termination and unlawful retaliation due to her race, color, and gender. And she alleges that male and white Caucasian employees got preferential treatment and superior benefits while denying the same benefits to her and other black or female employees that were working in the company. WWE told her she was fired for taking a WrestleMania 38 chair home when other writers did the same thing. Other white writers took chairs home. None of them got in trouble, and she was fired for this reason, according to her. She believes she was fired. The real reason she was fired was for pushing back on racist and offensive pitches in the writer's room, including, listen to some of these, writer Chris Dunn and some of his writing for Bianca Belair, trying to include, and I quote, don't make me take my earrings off and beat your ass in her promo, despite Bianca Belair telling Dunn 3 times that she didn't want to say it. He just put it in there anyway, every single week, regardless. This is all detailed in the lawsuit. These are actual examples that she gave. Also, Apollo Crews, speaking with his Nigerian accent, was also mentioned. Crews did not want to do this. Apparently, he did not enjoy this. Now, I remember at the time thinking it was something that he wanted to do. I don't remember what reports we were reading, and we were all kind of making fun of the Nigerian accent, because why would they have this guy who doesn't have a Nigerian accent? Why would they have him speak this way? Even if he has this family history and lineage, it's just weird. You know, it's right up there with Kofi's Jamaican accent. So we really didn't understand it, but it felt like at the time a character that Apollo was going to try to sink his teeth into. And I remember being kind of optimistic about the character, but learning now that Crews did not enjoy doing that whatsoever. They even sent him back down to NXT. Now he's finally back up on the main roster. But that whole thing, you know, was designed to get him over, and it didn't work. And the fact that they felt like he should be Nigerian after being on TV for years, not being Nigerian, is just one of the many examples of just stupidity in the writing room. Writer Ryan Callahan, who I think is one of the top writers either on Raw or SmackDown, it alleges that he pitched an idea of Shane Thorne, one of the old members of Retribution, hunting humans. And one of the humans he was going to be hunting was going to be Reggie, where he would have there were some photos of him like in a crocodile hunter type hat or something, or Crocodile Dundee hat, where he is going to hunt Reggie, beat up Reggie. Reggie would escape sometimes, but ultimately being captured and being put in a cage. So the idea was for Shane to hunt Reggie and put him in a cage. Okay? And this is probably the most fucked up one of all. Callahan also pitched an idea for Mansoor to be behind the 9/11 attacks. If you do the math, Mansoor was 6 during the 9/11 attacks. A 6-year-old is masterminding aircraft hijackings and Pentagon attacks, and apparently was the mastermind behind all of this at age 6. Apparently a 6-year-old brought our towers down. Who would have thought? Jennifer Pepperman, who was also a writer, treated black employees poorly compared to white employees. And Abrahams was called by WWE HR and asked about all of these racist accusations. Now, after she had that call with them, there was a meeting that happened with a senior VP of creative writing, and that person deliberately downplayed the situation, told Abrahams that, hey, look at all the waves we're making. We've never even had women on the writing team before at all. And now look at this. Maybe you should pick your battles. Pick your battles. That's something that I say on this channel to fans who freak out when Charlotte wins a match. This is exactly when you should pick your battle. What a stupid thing to say. What the fuck do you think she's doing? I am picking my battle, bitch. This one. And I just cannot believe that that was said to her. So when you read through all of this, it basically looks like you're now starting to have people in your writing room that isn't just going to be able to sit there and listen to this nonsense. And on top of that, if you're treating this person poorly or unfairly, and again, this is all just alleged behavior. You know, WWE always has a team of powerhouse lawyers. I don't think anybody would bring up some flimsy lawsuit up against WWE because they've defeated even the most ironclad lawsuits. So if you've got something flimsy and you're going to try to sue WWE and get a few bucks out of them, you're going to fail unless you have some real concrete evidence here. And it sounds like she has a lot of experiences from her time in the company and all of the fucked up shit she was subject to. And that's some of the culture in WWE that probably has taken a long time to change or to wear off. Some of the ridiculous things that were probably said in a writing room back in the Attitude Era with Russo and Ferrara and Vince and Patterson and everybody else there who doesn't give a fuck about anything. Imagine if this woman would have been back there. So now it sounds like you've got a lot of stupid writers with a lot of stupid fucking ideas and a lot of racist ideas and a lot of verbiage in the promos that Bianca said made her sound, quote, ghetto, and that type of thing that they believe to be creative, or these ideas that are just fucking tone deaf as hell. Now, it's also a writing room, you know, you have to remember. So I don't know if creative writing rooms really necessarily should be subject to the same types of standards and practices as your office behavior would be. You know, when you're writing and you're being creative and you got a team of people around, you know, throwing ideas, I think anything really needs to be on the table in order for creative ideas to really flourish. So I'm kind of willing to let more shit slide in a creative writing room because you're creating ideas, you're communicating, and you know, some of the ideas and the creative ideas you have, much like when you write for TV shows or movies, are going to be bad. You know, if two guys are sitting down trying to write a script for, you know, a movie about racism, you're going to have to include some pretty offensive things in there, you would have to think. So when you read all of this, first of all, none of it is surprising because it's exactly how we've known the behavior behind the scenes to be. And what's scary is it's probably the best it's ever been now. I mean, think about the days when there was no restraints whatsoever with the creative team and the type of shit they could pitch. Vince McMahon pitched fucking his own daughter, for Christ's sakes, you know. And then you think about even the locker room, the hazing and the talent and the JBL bullying and just so much just dirty behavior. The people that they ran out of that company, backstage people, wrestlers, apparently they made poor Muhammad Hassan's life a living fucking hell behind the scenes in terms of the talent. And a lot of the, you know, the writers, we've heard years of stories, you know, from CM Punk and others who have to deal with these stupid people who write their shit for them. And I cannot believe I'm reading that a white man is in charge of writing Bianca Belair's promos, you know, and him trying to relate to her and trying to write a promo as she would say it just exposes him for being a fucking idiot. And I think that, yes, you need to script things for people in wrestling because you can't have everybody who's doing all their own shit. Yes, you need writers and you need people to help with promos. But when it comes to a specific talent's, you know, how they deliver their lines, their cadence, their voice, their mannerisms, that's up to them to do. It's not your job to put a in there or to accentuate somebody's accent or anything. That's up to them, how they deliver the line. You need to have words spoken for a promo. That's your job. Write it down. This is the story you need to tell, you know, but in terms of that talent, that's what you pay them for, their talent. You need to trust them to do their job and to get these messages across as their character would, you know, or as they would. And I think writing little things in like that is just really kind of fucked up. But again, not surprising, in the lack of respect too. You know, Bianca Belair is somebody who's been there for a lot of years now. She's been Raw Women's Champion for over a year. She is a major star there. I mean, it's her and Rhea Ripley atop of that entire women's division. You can't show her the respect, you know, because I know there's plenty of male wrestlers and male champions in that company that if they don't like something, they'll tear up a script and crumple it up right in front of the writer's face. And the fact that Bianca is like, I'm not going to say that, and they say, oh, yes, you are, you know, she definitely has enough pull to say, no, I'm not. And if you make me, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you, because I guarantee you Bianca Belair could beat the shit out of any male writer, white or black, they have in that company. So reading this stuff is frustrating, but at the same time, completely unsurprising. I hope that Brittany Abrahams gets whatever she's looking to get out of this lawsuit, whether it's a financial amount or whatever. But I'm just happy that at least it draws attention to this type of shit. And like I said earlier, I'm fine with crazy shit being spitballed around a writer's room. That's not going to offend me too much, but it's some of this other stuff. When you have clear preferential treatment and you have, maybe a condescending workplace to where you're watching people being treated differently than you, whether they're a male or white or black or whatever. You're seeing this with your own eyes on a daily basis. You have a writing job, but you're not held to you're held to a different standard than other writers. Rules apply to you that don't apply to them. And on top of that, just the ignorant behavior by these people who are treated better than you, are the type of things that can spark lawsuits. And I think WWE needs to be more conscious of this when they have because I know Vince Vince likes all this stuff. He wants people to be as wild as possible. And maybe that's how they hire some of these writers who have worked on edgier content or products before. But I think, having a writing team that just isn't this clueless, would be much better for the product. And when you hear stories like this, it kind of makes sense why we see some of the terrible, lazy stories and writing and booking that we see, because these people are all idiots. Every now and then they get a good idea and the bloodline has worked, and there definitely are things on WWE programming from a creative storyline telling perspective they do better than AEW, but their promos and the segments are always designed to be really, really lazy and extremely excruciatingly formulaic. And when you have this just kind of level of thinking behind the scenes, it's not really surprising that you see the product we see on TV a lot of times with this being the environment behind the scenes. So we'll see what happens. WWE, I'm sure, will settle or make this go away to not, have too much bad press on them. At the end of the day, the merger with AEW and WWE, or I'm sorry, if only, right? The merger with UFC and WWE, I don't think that Vince, per se is going to probably be held accountable for this, because Dana White's slapping his wife on camera and nothing's happening to him. So I don't think this lawsuit is really going to change anything, but it's just going to add more and more scrutiny on the Vince McMahon era, the years of dirty behavior and gross behavior and hush money. And now apparently, years of writers who should know better and things like that. Maybe this will begin the process of moving away from these things. But again, it's going to be a process. And I don't know really at the end of the day if this lawsuit is going to affect or cause any sort of changes behind the scenes that clearly need to be made when you read the results or the details of this lawsuit. So best of luck to Brittany. I don't think this is somebody that's coming up making all these stories up, because if you're going to make up specific stories about specific people, it would be really silly just to make all that shit up out of thin air and then try to win a lawsuit against WWE's lawyers. Come on. So I think she has real legs to stand on here. Otherwise, the lawsuit wouldn't have been filed, and we'll see where it goes and how it gets settled. But I'm sure WWE will do its best to drag it out, make people forget about it, and then quietly settle it. That's generally how they handle these things. And I don't think this will be any different. So that's the latest scandal in WWE. If you're keeping score, I think your scorecard is full in terms of WWE and Vince scandals. So flip it over and you got a fresh list to fill in the future scandals that we get. So just flip over your scorecard. You'll see more spaces to fill in your lawsuits. We should talk a little bit about CM Punk and the latest with CM Punk. Now, the whole reason I came up this past Monday and did a Raw review was because we learned earlier on in the day that CM Punk actually showed up at Raw in Chicago last Monday backstage. It was last Monday, right? What the hell day are we on? It wasn't a week ago, right? It was this past Monday. Got to look at my own shit to make sure. Yes, it was just 5 days ago on Monday Night Raw. CM Punk showed up behind the scenes at Raw and spoke to several people, including Bobby Lashley, including The Miz, who he apparently mended fences with because they had a couple of gnarly Twitter exchanges there a couple of years ago, and spoke briefly to Triple H, even asked Triple H if he had time to talk, which Triple H responded, I got to check with the big man. And then shortly after that, they made the decision to ask CM Punk to leave, which he did. So Punk being there was really head scratching. We didn't know why he was there. We speculated that maybe it was him trying to send a message. First of all, CM Punk's really smart. He knows how to get people talking. And I thought maybe it was him trying to send a message that either he wants to go back to WWE or mending a couple of fences, having a conversation with Triple H, patching things up with The Miz, trying to show AEW, hey, look, I'm in mending fences mode. I've caught the mending fences bug. We need to have meetings so we can clear all this up. And then we heard that CM Punk apparently flew from Florida to Chicago because Punk just showing up at Raw, it's in his hometown, no big deal. And by the way, for the people that were treating this as no big deal, do you hear yourselves? My God, I saw this opinion floating around a lot. It's no big deal. People show up and visit friends backstage all the time. Ricky Starks just did it with Cody Rhodes at the Royal Rumble. I'm like, it's CM Punk. This is not Britt Baker supporting your boyfriend in NXT. This is a completely different thing. This is CM Punk. And how many times does WWE run Chicago every year? Several. How many years has CM Punk been gone? 10. He's had he's probably had in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 opportunities to show up at any backstage event in WWE, because aside from TV, they run live events there too. So he had plenty of time throughout the last decade to show up behind the scenes at a WWE show, and he never did. He chooses now of all times, to show up there when there's more uncertainty attached to his name, more drama attached to his name than ever before. A lot of rumors of him returning to AEW in just a couple of months on that Saturday show in June. He's going to be a big part of their storylines going forward in the summer, and he'll be a big part of the All In show in Wembley. Those are all the reports that we've been hearing from Dave, from Sean, from everybody else. CM Punk is all but back in the company. So what is he doing at Raw? I figured he's getting his name out there and creating buzz virally. They're not really talking about him on TV right now. We've heard no other stories about meetings that have taken place with him, Tony Khan, the Bucks, Kenny, Jericho, nothing like that. So I thought it was either Jericho or Punk trying to create noise by showing up in WWE, knowing how that's going to get people talking and get a lot of buzz. That way, when he does return, he makes the biggest impact. He's like, well, the company's not going to be able to advertise me or talk much about me before my return, so I better make all sorts of noise so I can get as much buzz going as possible. That could have been the motivation too. But then when you hear that he flew from Florida up there, you're like, well, why did he fly from Florida? Apparently, he was down there doing that meeting that we heard about that hadn't taken place yet. There was a meeting scheduled between Jericho and CM Punk, Tony Khan possibly involved, FTR possibly involved. Whatever that meeting was apparently did take place. We haven't heard any details about the meeting other than Jericho and Punk have met. They have discussed things. So what was discussed in that meeting that would make Punk go to Raw and make an appearance there backstage, knowing the type of publicity that's going to get online? And it made me wonder, I'm like, did the meeting not go well, or did the meeting go very well? Because if the meeting went so-so, like if Jericho and Punk met and whoever was there, I don't even know if it was FTR. If you guys have any details about this meeting, hit us in the chat with it. But if it was Jericho and Tony Khan or FTR or whoever was involved in this meeting, and everybody agreed to move forward and work together, obviously there's still going to be some bad blood, but they're not going to let that get in the way of business. And they agreed to be professional throughout this, but they still left the meeting not exactly best friends, just agreeing to coexist for the betterment of AEW, so to speak. And then Punk gets right on a plane and shows up backstage at Monday Night Raw. Was that Punk saying that he was not happy with the proceedings in the meeting and he's going to go to WWE just to try to get in there, and maybe he can talk to Triple H and say, hey, my contract is up in December, or I can leave, or whatever? We don't know. Or did the meeting go very well to where Jericho and Punk are, on the same page? We're going to work together when you get back. And Punk's like, hey, maybe, WWE's in Chicago. I'm about to fly back there. Maybe I should show up there. Maybe that decision was made on the plane. I did read something about Punk was, when he was flying home, he was on the plane with WWE wrestlers who were like, you should come to Raw. Maybe that's how it happened. It completely broke poor Dave Meltzer and Brian Alvarez, both of which get a ton of shit. I like both guys. I do. I like Dave. I like Brian. But there's this clip going around of the two of them in just the most monotone, somber voices. And they seem so confused, dejected, and hurt about CM Punk showing up in WWE, almost as if like it's the end. And they feel that him showing up there was a sign that he wants to go back there. It was a sign that whatever took place in the meeting between Jericho and Punk must not have gone well. And Punk is already starting to plan his future without AEW. Maybe Punk knows there's no way out of AEW until my contract is up. So I just got to work that out. But I'm so disgusted with how the meeting went. I already know what I want to do. I want to go back to WWE. But, you know, him being there already with a company that has kind of a tumultuous relationship with WWE, you're entering into contract tampering territory if you have this guy back there backstage, you know, and that's why would he choose to do that? People in AEW either knew he was going to do that, or he's doing that to fuck with him, or they're all doing it to fuck with us. I have no idea, but that is a really, really interesting story, and we haven't really heard any of the latest on it, but I still think the plan is for Punk to show up in June, and he'll be back then on that Saturday show, but we haven't heard of Tony Khan's response to this, what he thought about all this. Is this something that pissed him off? Did he know Punk was going to do this? I mean, I would think that Punk might text him, be like, hey, I'm going to show up backstage at Raw. And then maybe Tony Khan was like, oh, that'll be interesting. Or maybe he didn't know about it and he's pissed. I don't know. We don't know. But it still does look like Punk is indeed coming back. He's going to be a big part of AEW this summer. Apparently him and Jericho have had their meeting, but from what we understand, there hasn't been a meeting yet with Punk and the Elite. And like I've reiterated in my last couple of podcasts, and I wanted to make a point this podcast to not talk so much about CM Punk, because I think last week we went for an hour and a half on the subject, and I'm like, that's done. But one thing I've said all along during this is that if they're creating this Saturday show as some sort of a brand split to keep talent who have issues with each other away from each other, that is really, really bad news and a recipe for disaster in your company. You have to have much more of a grasp on this than that. That is not a viable option in my mind to do it that way, especially when you're dealing with a bunch of millionaires that just can't get along, when you knew if they could get along, there could be a shit ton of money to be made. So I am of the belief that's still going to get done. I feel like Punk and the Bucks and Kenny, if Punk is going to come back into the company, they have to speak and have to have a meeting, and they have to clear the air as best as they possibly can. And if you can clear the air enough to run that 6-man in Wembley, Punk and FTR against Kenny and the Bucks, then, you know, that's one hell of a match. Or you just go one-on-one main event, Kenny Omega, CM Punk for the title, if you somehow can figure that out and get that belt off of MJF. But I don't think Punk can really come back unless, and it can work. I mean, he can come back, but he can't come back and it's going to be a success unless some sort of air is cleared with the Bucks or whatever. And Hangman Page too, he's got to be a part of this as well. But, you know, dealing with CM Punk, I can totally understand somebody on the other side of this saying, I don't even want to deal with that fucker anymore. Like, I get it. But at the same time, you're making millions of dollars. Sometimes you just got to deal with the fucker. You know, when you're making a certain amount of money, there's just going to have to be sacrifices that are going to need to be made. And one of those sacrifices is you might have to work with somebody you fucking hate. And at least you're making money doing that. And you're not at a minimum wage job working for somebody you hate. So things could be worse. And that's why I think I get a little bit angry with these fellas, that I know the fans only know so much, and there's way more details about this than we probably don't even have a clue about. And these guys have the reasons for feeling the way they do. But Greg has always seen the world in very simple terms. And the way I see this is that there is money to be made. And if the only thing standing in the way of great wrestling for the fans and great money for you guys is you guys not getting over your little pinch fight, man, that's disappointing, man. It's time to fucking knuckle up and be men, clear the air, whatever. This little brawl that took place backstage in the grand scheme of wrestling backstage brawls probably wasn't even that bad. And these guys should be able to work together again. Fuck, Dynamite Kid and Jacques had a match before Dynamite deep-throated a roll of quarters, you know? Like, so if they can do it, these guys can do it, and they all need to do it. We'll keep our eye on the CM Punk and AEW situation as we move forward, and if we hear any more details about that very bizarre appearance that he made backstage in WWE. Before we move on to our last couple of news topics, let me scroll over here and see what you guys were saying about that situation. Plus, I know there's super chats that I need to hit. Where'd they go? There we go. Now I'm back. Reading some of these comments. Pardon my pausing. Yeah, and I think, and one of the things too about the lawsuit, a lot of people are mentioning, and that's what Abrahams was alleging too, is, you know, representation is important, and when you don't have a lot of that, that's when you can kind of have these skewed creative ideas from these fucking white people. So I just think WWE's done a lot of things right, you know, in terms of representation on their talent brand and, you know, and champions. And now finally seeing, you know, people of color win championships and win them often, you know, that's a big step forward, you know, but it also needs to affect what we see behind the scenes as well, you know. But from a business standpoint, I've always like hated like company and corporate vibes. That's why I stayed out of that business. I just went in the restaurant business so I can just be on my feet, talk to people, goof around, you know, walk 7 miles a day and make a good living doing it without having to put a suit on and deal with corporate politics and BS and HR and discrimination and all that stuff. You know, it's never been my favorite topic or subject. I just really hate the business world, you know, or the corporate world. And it's got to be really difficult for a minority or a woman or anything that's coming into what's largely been a man's world and trying to succeed there, and then dealing with the shit that you have to deal with that comes with that. So I wouldn't want to be in that situation, that's for sure. But hopefully it's the beginning of what, you know, continues to usher in more and more change, because nothing changes overnight. Everything changes gradually, you know, and it sucks that it takes discrimination lawsuits to get things done. But in a company like WWE, it's probably the best that we can ask for with someone like them, or with a company like them. All right, I think that I hit all the super chats. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss any of them before we get into the next couple of news tidbits that we have. Tito the Alien says Punk was spying. Well, he didn't get very far. If he wanted to spy, he could figure out better ways to do it. I think Punk was trying to make a point and plant a seed, and that's what he did. Punk is smart. He does everything for a reason. Yeah, Zach, Mania 22 was at the Allstate, not United Center. Mania, that used to be the old Rosemont Horizon. WrestleMania 2 was in that building. WrestleMania 13 was in that building. WrestleMania 22, Money in the Bank, when when Punk beat Cena, it was also there, right? So that show has seen the debut, or that arena, I should say, has seen great shows, including the debut of Chris Jericho as well in WWE. Back in 1999. Those were the days. So guess who is now in Impact? Trinity Fatu has debuted in Impact. I don't know if it's aired on TV yet, because all the videos I saw looked to be fan cam shit. So I think it was an Access taping. And she showed up in Impact. She cut a promo. And I think later she ran in at the end of a Coven against Grace and Purrazzo tag team match. And Mercedes Moné was even spotted in the crowd showing support to Trinity. So congrats to Trinity. I'm just happy for her. If this is what she wants to do, I'm surprised Impact is her choice. It feels like she could have gone back to WWE if she wanted to. I don't know if she's been trying to go the Mercedes Moné route and find some outside wrestling to do. Maybe nobody's wanted to bring her in. I don't know why. Maybe this is the first time she's been available contractually, perhaps. Not really sure the details, but Impact is going to be her landing place. I wouldn't think she signed an exclusive contract with them, but she might have. I feel like she's signed with them to appear and is under contract to Impact to a degree, but I would think that Trinity could do other things if she so chose. If she so chose. I'm surprised AEW didn't want to bring her in, but maybe that was part of it. Maybe if she went to AEW, she would have to sign an exclusive deal, and she didn't want to do that. She might want to go do Japan stuff with Mercedes and do some other shit, and maybe Impact is her first stop. At the end of the day, as long as Trinity's doing what Trinity wants to do, Greg's happy for Trinity. At the end of the day, I'm happy that her and Mercedes have found, especially Trinity, who's, her husband is there in the company in WWE and everything, to be able to have the courage to go out there and spread your wings without that company machine. I think is sometimes something that wrestlers just need to do for themselves. And I think eventually they'll both be back in WWE. But I think this is them going out there and exploring other avenues to apply their craft, and I think that's great, regardless of where they show up. Impact was a weird choice, but she's there, and I wish Trinity the best. We talked a little bit about WrestleMania 40 when we were talking about the championship belt situation in WWE. And WrestleVotes, I think, was responsible for the rumor about the Cody and Roman match being on the table for WrestleMania 40 next year in Philadelphia. And as I said earlier, the only way Cody and Roman at WrestleMania 40 makes any sense if it's a Cody title defense, because you push this thing a whole nother year. I'm already worried that this SummerSlam idea that everybody has for Cody is way too predictable. Money in the Bank SummerSlam, because then Money in the Bank, Cody's going to call his shot 2 months later or 1 month later. Don't know the date on SummerSlam, probably a month and a half later, where that SmackDown show in MSG is just days away. It's like the following Friday. So Cody could win the Money in the Bank in London, show up on Raw and say, I'm cashing in this Friday on SmackDown in Madison Square Garden and win the title right there. I love that idea so much better. But whether it's Madison Square Garden or SummerSlam, I think this rumor of Cody and Roman main eventing WrestleMania 40 could be Cody defending his title, and how interesting it would be if Cody actually beat Roman and retained his title at WrestleMania 40, just like Roman did to him. So a lot of fans were freaking out about that idea, but I'm not, provided there's a different twist. Now, if they keep the belt on Roman this whole time, and then Cody wrestles this whole entire year, and then they recreate the whole thing, Cody and Roman next year at WrestleMania 40, much like the SummerSlam show, I feel like that's way too predictable. So I feel like the only way Cody and Roman work at WrestleMania 40 is if Cody goes into that match as WWE champion, and I hope that he does. We talked about WrestleMania 41 being rumored for Minneapolis, Minnesota, which I think is just fine, because Minnesota just built that new arena a few years back where the Minnesota Vikings play football. And it's a beautiful facility, apparently, and shouldn't be too cold that time of year. It's indoors. Hopefully they're not all covered in snow when you get to April. But Minneapolis would be a good place. They've held a Super Bowl, I believe, before, and it's a good city. I used to have some family there at one time, and I've been to Minnesota a bunch of times when I was a kid, and shit, I always liked the state. Tons of lakes, and they sent the Lakers to us here in Los Angeles, so we always appreciate that from Minneapolis. I have no issue whatsoever if Minnesota gets a WrestleMania. I'm not sure if I will make the trip to Minneapolis. I'll probably stay put right here in San Diego, but I'm happy for them if that turns out to be true. They have been on the board for a while, needing a WrestleMania, and we need to get it out of some of these repeat cities. The LAs, New Yorks, New Orleans, and Orlandos and shit. It feels like it's there a lot. Now Minneapolis is a new place, and I would love to see them also hit Atlanta, who built a new stadium recently for the Falcons. I remember years ago, can't remember where, too many of the details about this, but reading an article about the new building in Minneapolis, something to the effect of when they built the new stadium, the big glass front of the stadium was right in the middle of a bird migration path. And what was happening is birds were flying into the glass and dying, like just piles of birds were forming outside the arena because these birds were just cracked because they can't. It's like when a bird gets caught in a grocery store and just runs right into the fucking glass. That's what they were doing, and they were hitting it. And I guess they had to spend a couple of $1 million to fix this problem so the birds would stop ramming it. I don't know if that's an accurate story. I remember hearing it a couple of years ago. I'm like, that's really interesting and sad that birds were dying like that. But apparently they fixed whatever was causing that. But if you're interested in that story, look it up and let me know what you find. Here's a nice, heartwarming piece of news. Joey Janela, who has got this wonderful Florida man gimmick right now, by the way, it's hilarious. Him and Enzo Amore have squashed their beef. There was a photo of the two of them on Twitter shaking hands. Janella looked thrilled. Enzo still did not look all that happy. I saw Enzo at WrestleCon, actually. He's gotten a little bit bigger. And they had that little incident a couple of years ago. Now, I tried to get some details on this, and I found a post on Fightful Select. Here's what they said about the Joey Janela and Enzo beef squash. Apparently, Enzo Amore and Joey Janela got into a physical altercation at the 2019 Blink-182 concert and hadn't been on good terms ever since. However, Janela posted a picture shaking Enzo's hand on Thursday, indicating their issues were over. We're told that Janela and Enzo were both attending the official New York Giants draft party at MetLife Stadium. Enzo and Janela had mutual friends at the event, and Enzo came to Janela's table. Janela approached Enzo and offered a handshake, and they squashed their issues. Janela thanked Enzo, and Enzo thanked Janela for also ending his issues with Big Bill / Big Cass. I didn't even know Janela had issues with Big Bill. The two talked about wrestling shortly after, and Enzo left. So sounds like it was just they were both at the same place, and they took that opportunity to squash a beef. And I like that because it's been a while. I remember seeing that video. Enzo, I think, was trying to fight Joey Janela, and Janela, might have backed off. I don't know. Neither one of these guys come off as tough to me at all. But I think if I was in Janela's shoes in that situation, I might have been a little bit less scared of Enzo, or maybe at least not backed off. But he also didn't want to get violent. This was a concert. There was a lot of people around. Two professional wrestlers who are, small-sized celebrities should not be getting into brawls in the middle of families and people and all of that. So Joey Janela did the right thing. It's just, Enzo, was doing a lot of barking and a lot of talking, and he wanted to square up, and Janela was just like, nah, I'm good, peace. And now that it's been 4 years since this took place, they were able to come together, squash it. No reason to fight now. 4 years later, we're grown fucking men, pushing 40 years old or late 30s or however old they are. They ain't young. They're way too old to be engaging in middle school fights, that's for sure. So the fact that that was squashed was nice. Good to see that picture. And I'm loving Janela doing the Florida man. That's funny shit. In terms of what other wrestling news I have, I don't have much else. I do want to talk briefly about this past week's Dynamite. Now, we're not going to run through everything here, but we were here watching it on Wednesday, and I really loved this past week's Dynamite because the previous week I didn't really like. But Tony Khan was on Dynamite to give the fans a big announcement, and we were all wondering what that was going to be. And it turns out that it was about the Owen Hart tournament. So the Owen Hart tournament will return this year, although this year they're doing things a little bit differently. Last year, the finals took place at Double or Nothing. I was there to watch Britt Baker and Adam Cole win those trophies. Footage of both of these victories, by the way, is over on Bald Guy Wrestling if you want to check them out. More footage coming to Bald Guy Wrestling soon. I'm a busy guy. And TK announced that they're going to have some opening ceremonies in Vegas for Double or Nothing. So that will be cool. I'm not sure what that opening ceremony will include, but probably a big video package or something kicking off the tournament. And he says that all of the matches for the tournament will be taking place in Canada, with some of the matches taking place at Forbidden Door, which is in Toronto in June. So I guess they must have a Canada tour coming up, to where they're going to be hitting a couple of shows, because that's where all the matches are going to take place. And the finals of the Owen Hart tournament will take place on July 15th, which is a Saturday. So that's probably going to be that Collision show, and it will be in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So that's very cool that they're going to do all the matches in Canada, with the finals being in Calgary. I'm sure Martha Hart will be there. I don't know Martha and Brett's relationship. I don't think it's great, to be honest. But if it was okay enough for Brett to be a part of this too, I think it would be really cool if he was there and a part of the tournament somehow, or there to present the trophy to the winner or whoever. Somebody had a great, I can't remember who it is now. Somebody had a great suggestion for the winner of the Owen tournament, and I can't remember who they suggested. There was a man and a woman winner, and I loved it. I can't remember if it was in the chat on Wednesday or where, or maybe might have been on Twitter, but somebody had a great idea for the two winners, and whoever it was, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea, but now I can't remember what the hell it was. But either way, that's good news about the Owen tournament, that's continuing, because I was starting to wonder what they were going to do with that. As well, on Dynamite, we saw a great match for the international title. Orange Cassidy defeating Bandito and successfully retaining. After the match, the two became friends and even walked into Renee Paquette to do an interview after the match, and they would return later on during the really good Adam Cole and Jericho confrontation. Now, Cole is 1 week removed from watching his girlfriend, or I'm sorry, his fiance, or I don't even know, watching Britt Baker, his woman, get beat down, get a black eye at the hands of the Outcasts. And while he was handcuffed to the ring ropes, so he wanted to get revenge on Jericho. He gets in Jericho's face. They start fighting. The JAS jumps in. Numbers game takes over on Adam Cole. Cassidy and Bandito try to come out to help, so they're back, but they get overwhelmed as well by the numbers game until we see graphics on the Tron. We hear music. We're not quite sure who it is, and out comes Roderick Strong. Roderick Strong comes down to save Adam Cole. He is now in AEW. The two share an embrace. You get O'Reilly back healthy, and we are going to get Undisputed versus the Elite someday. That's going to be really good, and really cool to see Roderick Strong in AEW. We've been wondering what's been going on with him. We know he's requested his release at least once and was denied. And we haven't really seen him around or heard about him in months. Well, apparently he did finish up with the company at the end of the year and has been in negotiations with AEW all this time. So it wasn't a last minute thing. A lot of fans were speculating, oh, is he still under contract at WWE? I'm like, no, nobody really thought he was still under contract at WWE, but nobody had this debut called. I didn't see this on any websites, no spoilers, no nothing, or days before, nobody said it's believed that Roderick Strong is signed with the company. Nobody knew this, and he just showed up, and I'm so happy for him because he's been trying to get out of WWE forever. His woman, Marina Shafir, is in the company as well. He's got friends there. Perfect place for Roddy to finish things up and have a good little run, close out his career maybe, because that Diamond Mine shit was just not working out, and I'm glad he's gone, and I'm really glad he's in AEW now and reunited with Adam Cole. That was a lot of fun to watch. I also loved watching Jade Cargill retain her title. She had that match with Taya Valkyrie. Now, Taya could not use her move. She couldn't use her move. That was a stipulation in the match, so she went up for it, and because she couldn't use it and would get disqualified, that allowed Jade to kind of roll her up for a pin. The finish was really, really weak looking, but I didn't necessarily hate the match so much, and I'm still really liking Jade and her run. And you have to start wondering when the best time to take the title off of Jade is going to be and who it's going to be to do it. And I think All In could be a spot for that. And I would love to see a champion versus champion match, Jade against Jamie Hayter. I think that would be a lot of fun, but it could turn out to be Britt Baker beating Jade Cargill, but somebody's going to have to beat her eventually. And whoever that person is doesn't necessarily have to be a new or young person, because Jade already is, you know, a fresh kind of newer talent, even though she's been on a crazy run. I'd be perfectly fine with a veteran beating her, provided it was the right veteran, and the victory and Jade's loss and her run ending is a big deal. That's all I really care about, is making that moment. I don't want Jade's loss to fall flat in any way. So hopefully whatever they're building up here for Jade, she either needs to drop that title or she needs to win the AEW women's title while still being the TBS champion, is the way I feel. Maybe she does what Asuka did in NXT and just forfeits the title after she wins the world title. We'll see. Jeff Jarrett beat Dax Harwood on Wednesday. That was kind of an interesting one-on-one match, and they are finally getting closer to solidifying the four-pillar four-way at Double or Nothing, which we know is going to be the match with MJF defending against Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin, and Jungle Boy. But to get there, they've taken quite the road, because they kind of did the little mini pillar tournament thing, which put Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin in the finals on Wednesday, and Sammy and MJF have an agreement where Sammy's going to lay down for him if he wins. So MJF's going to do everything in his power to get Sammy into the finals. He helped him win the week before, and now he's out here in the match with Darby. MJF showing up. He takes Darby's skateboard. We get a referee distraction. Darby catches the skateboard from MJF. Referee's back is turned. Sammy Guevara falls down on the mat, Eddie Guerrero style. Referee turns around to see Sammy down. Darby holding the skateboard disqualifies Darby, giving Sammy Guevara the win. And of course, that's going to be now your match on paper. at Double or Nothing, MJF versus Sammy. And the belief is Sammy is just going to lay down for MJF. Now, ever since this whole nonsense started, I've been saying they're still going to do the four-way. They're still going to do the four-way. This is just taking the long road to get there. And we knew that all along. So you could hear Shivani on commentary while MJF and Sammy are celebrating. You can hear him snickering. Oh, I'll tell him. And I was saying to you guys, I'm like, Shivani's about to announce that we're going to get the four-way, but he didn't. He announced one more step to get to that four-way. Next week, there's going to be a tag. There's a couple of big matches scheduled for this Dynamite on Wednesday. So next week, we're going to get Sammy Guevara and MJF teaming up to take on Jungle Boy and Darby Allin in a tag team match. And if Darby and Jungle win, then both of them will be added to the Sammy Guevara and MJF match at Double or Nothing, making it a four pillars match. Now, a lot of this stuff has been weird. Some fans think it doesn't make much sense. Some fans think there could have been better ways to get to this four-way, and there's lots of ideas you could have done. The reason I think they're doing it like this is because of who MJF's character is. Now, like normally in WWE, you have one of these stupid promos where all four guys get in the ring and they're all talking shit or whatever, and then Adam Pearce just comes out and makes a fatal four-way match or something. But I just don't think you could have flat out made that match with the type of character that MJF is, who, requires special treatment. He doesn't even wrestle very much or defend the title. And all of a sudden he's going to be expected to have his 50% chance go down to 25 by taking on three guys, putting himself at a huge disadvantage. He's never just going to go for that. So, and even if you booked him in that, he'd have a team of his lawyers, trying to undo the match or whatever. So at least this way, you have this little tournament to actually determine a real one-on-one challenger for MJF, but he continues to try to fuck up and manipulate it to give himself an advantage. That way you can have Tony Khan step in and say, no, you can't do that. As punishment, now you have to face all four of these guys. So that's kind of what they did here. MJF kept sticking his nose in there so much that Tony Khan made the ruling for the tag team match, and that's a very predictable finish for Wednesday. Darby Allin and Jungle Boy are going to win that, and it will be official, I don't think they call it fatal four-way, but a four-way match, four pillars match for MJF's title at Double or Nothing. I'm sure he will be very pissed about this and pitch and moan and scream and yell and try to do everything in his power between now and Double or Nothing to get the match changed. Ultimately, he will fail at that, but unlike last year's Double or Nothing where he got murdered by Wardlow, he'll retain his title against all three of those guys, in my opinion. Main event of Dynamite was pretty good. Kenny and Takeshita defeated Butcher and the Blade. Blackpool Combat Club attacked after the match, and the Bucks came out to make the save. Now, when they were making the save, they took over the Blackpool. Kenny got out the screwdriver. Takeshita's on the outside of the ring. Danielson's telling Takeshita to get in the ring and save. I believe it's Moxley who's going to get screwdrivered. I don't even know what purpose the screwdriver serves, but I'm getting tired of seeing it, that's for sure. So Takeshita stops the screwdriver attack, only to then get attacked himself by the Blackpool Combat Club, who just completely annihilate him. They bloody up his head with the screwdriver, so unnecessary blood with like 30 seconds left in the show. They open him up and just beat the living hell out of Takeshita. It's kind of his own fault because he was the one that jumped in and stopped the attack to begin with. So there's still something else going on here with BCC and Don Callis and Takeshita and his whole relationship with both of these factions. Something's up here for sure. And this week on Dynamite, they've booked an awesome match. Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley in a steel cage. That's going to be good, provided AEW doesn't try to blow up the cage. As long as this is not an exploding cage match, it should be awesome. I'm looking forward to Moxley and Omega on Wednesday. So I enjoyed Dynamite a lot this week. Hell, I even enjoyed Raw because we got a big announcement of a new championship that's going to be crowned at Night of Champions. Last night's SmackDown, as baffling as the draft can be at times, it was still a draft, and it still is ushering in somewhat of a new look and era in WWE. And among all of the thoughtless and nonsensical decisions that we got out of this draft, we also got some that did make some sense. And there were some of these moves like Drew and Gunther to Raw that I think were going to be very beneficial. Lashley to SmackDown, Edge to SmackDown. I like a lot of those moves. So they weren't all bad, but at the end of the day, my hopes of the draft being better under Triple H, I didn't really get that feeling last night on SmackDown. And you guys might not have either. So that's it, man. I have 2 hours and 20 minutes we are into this podcast. Told you guys I wasn't in any hurry today to get this thing done. So let's cruise back over to the chat, knock out any more questions you guys have, and then we are going to finish up this podcast, and we will be back tomorrow for Backlash 99. Let's see what the chat is talking about. Oh, sorry. Thank you, MH Nova. Shit, it isn't. The cage match isn't until Wednesday the 10th. I'm sorry. I thought when I saw that graphic. Thank you for correcting me, MH Nova. Appreciate that. Oh, yeah, MJF and his pickles. I loved on Wednesday when he was at the commentary table eating his pickles, offering one to Taz. MJF and his pickles, man. Stone Cold, 10X, appreciate the $5, dude. Would love Mania to come back to Houston. Hasn't been there since 25. Plus, NRG isn't that old. Who's NRG? I don't know who NRG is. Maybe that's a stadium. Yeah, when were they there last? WrestleMania 25. Yeah, I guess that's where the Shawn and Taker match happened. Yeah, Houston is probably due because that's a giant city. So is Atlanta. I would love to see him hit Charlotte at some point. and Minneapolis, of course. Cup of Haters. I almost forgot that. Okay, so August 5th is the current SummerSlam. Okay, so that would put the Money in the Bank win and a Cody win at SummerSlam a month apart. But I think it would be cool if it was just a week apart and he won it in Madison Square Garden. That would be awesome. JW, $2 more. There are a lot more black or racial champions now. Well, yeah, we just talked about that. Racial champions. All right, I think that kind of does it for the chat. I'm just scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss anything because I really feel guilty if I notice that I missed something after the fact. Shell Shock is showing up late. Man, you missed a long one, a doozy. We've been up here for nearly 2.5 hours now, and I'm just finishing up. We dissected the draft hard. We talked about the draft. We talked about the moves. We talked about what we could see on Monday, and we really unpacked the World Heavyweight title situation with Roman Reigns' belts and the new World Heavyweight Championship that Triple H unveiled on Monday. Who should win that, what they should do, what kind of history and lineage it should have, and what Cody's path should be through the summer and heading into next year's WrestleMania 40. On top of that, we got into AEW. We talked about the WWE lawsuit. It's been a long, long podcast, so catch up, Shell Shock, on demand, and you guys won't even have to wait very long for this podcast to be pushed out to the podcast feed because I will have that up in just a little bit. Usually it takes several hours, but I will have that up quick today. WWE fan, appreciate 2 from you. Punk is at the Impact Wrestling taping. He is. Are we sure about that? Maybe that's some news that's out there right now. That's interesting. The Juliet, appreciate 2 from you. KO and Sammy retained the tag belts last night. Yes, I talked about that earlier, though, when I briefly mentioned SmackDown, that that match took place and it was the main event and it was the only thing that really mattered on the show. And Usos did lose, and it looked like Solo was about to do something before Riddle took him out. And now with Roman and Solo being drafted together, but not the Usos, it feels like the Usos are either going to be drafted to Raw on Monday or they will be put on SmackDown. I feel like they kind of need to be on SmackDown so they can finish what's happening here, because if they draft the Usos separately and then Roman keeps sending Solo to Raw, like right off the bat, your brand split means nothing. So I feel like in order to do whatever you're going to do with the Usos here, that needs to happen really soon, or you just need to draft them to Raw, or draft them to SmackDown, and they stay there with Roman so all this shit can be worked out. But the Usos are kind of in the doghouse right now with Roman, and I don't know how moving them to Raw would allow this storyline to continue. You know what I mean? But yeah, we did talk about it earlier on at Juliet. It was just real quick. Oh, yeah, you got to have Pack in Wembley. I'm down with that too. But anywho, thank you so much for being here on this long podcast on this Saturday evening or afternoon, depending on where you live. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night. Tomorrow's going to be fun. We're going to watch the first ever Backlash 1999. This was headlined by Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Rematch from WrestleMania 15. Also, the final pay-per-view match of Owen Hart and a few other things that are interesting on Backlash as well. I think a Boiler Room Brawl might even be on this thing as well. There's lots of stuff on Backlash. It's going to be fun tomorrow night, so make sure you're here. 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. It's going to be fun. Other than that, I just want to wish you guys a great rest of your day and a great rest of your weekend. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday with me, and I'll catch you tomorrow for Backlash 99.